Good evening. Welcome, everyone. The meeting will be called to order. This is the Marion City Council meeting for Thursday, April 4th, 2019. Thank you all for joining us. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Mr. Draper?
Here.
Ms. Atkins? Here. Mr. Jensen?
Here.
Mayor Abu-Osley?
Here.
Mr. Sternad?
Present.
Mr. Brandt?
Here.
Ms. Gedalia?
Thank you. And we were advised that Council Member Gedalia will be arriving late, so she will be here just a little bit late. Okay, we have a full agenda today, so we'll get started. We first up, we have 3 proclamations, and I'll come down front to present them. Okay, our first proclamation is for Child Abuse Prevention Month. Do we have anyone here to accept this? This is, okay. So we'll just present it to the city clerk, who will then mail it to them. Okay. Whereas the Iowa Department of Human Services confirmed or founded 552 cases of child abuse in Linn County in 2017. And whereas child abuse and neglect is a serious problem affecting every segment of our community and requires action from everyone in our community to prevent it. And whereas our children are our most valuable resource and will shape the future of Marion and Linn County. And whereas child abuse and neglect directly harm children and increase the likelihood of long-term physical and mental health problems, alcohol and substance abuse, continued family violence, and criminal behavior. And whereas child abuse and neglect occur when people find themselves in stressful situations and don't know how to cope, whereas the majority of child abuse cases stem from situations and conditions that are preventable in an engaged and caring community, and whereas every child can have a great childhood by making sure every family has the support and education they need in raising their children in safe, nurturing environments, and whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among social service agencies, schools, faith communities, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And whereas community members must make every effort to promote programs and activities that benefit children and their families. Now, therefore, I, Nicholas Abu-Osley, Mayor of the City of Marion, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2019 as Child Abuse Prevention Month, and call upon all citizens to increase their participation in building caring connections with families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the community in which we live. Okay, our next proclamation is for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And do we have anybody here to accept this? Are you Jonathan? Come on forward. Jonathan Chambers with Riverview Center. Okay, good. Okay. Whereas sexual assault affects women, children, and men of all racial, cultural, and economic backgrounds, and whereas in addition to the immediate physical and emotional costs, sexual assault may also have associated consequences of post-traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse, depression, homelessness, eating disorders, and suicide. And whereas sexual assault can be devastating not only to the survivor, but also for the family and friends of the survivor. And since no one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate sexual assault on their own, we must work together to educate our entire population about what can be done to prevent sexual assault, support victims and survivors and their significant others, and support those agencies providing services to victims and survivors. Now, therefore, I, Nicholas Abu-Osley, Mayor of the City of Marion, Iowa, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2019 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Marion, Iowa, and encourage all citizens of the city to learn more about preventing sexual violence. So, yeah, you're welcome. I could say anything, or?
We really appreciate the partnership with the city. We're doing a lot of work, and Cedar Rapids, Marion area is our largest service area. So having this partnership and working together is a great opportunity to stop this. I'm one of the few individuals probably that wants to work myself out of a job. Prevention is the key. So I want to thank you all for being a part of this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, is Kim Gordon? Here she is. All right. So Kim is with the Civil Rights Commission, and she's here to accept this proclamation for Fair Housing Month. So, whereas April 2019 marks the 51st anniversary of the passage of the U.S. Fair Housing Act of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, commonly known as the Federal Fair Housing Act. And whereas the Act sought to open doors of opportunity and eliminate discrimination in housing and to affirmatively further fair housing. And as we celebrate the 51st anniversary of this historic legislation, we reaffirm our commitment to ensuring that everyone has equal and fair access to housing. And whereas fair housing assures individuals have the right to choose where to live without discrimination based on age, color, creed, familial status, gender, identity, marital status, mental disability, national origin, physical disability, race, religion, sex, and/or sexual orientation. And whereas in Marion, we want to be recognized as an open and inclusive community that is committed to providing fair housing and advocating for equal housing opportunity for all citizens and prospective citizens of Marion. And whereas Marion's elected officials encourage all citizens and community organizations to celebrate the value of harmonious and diverse communities and support the goal of fair housing for all people. Now, therefore, I, Nicholas Abu Asali, Mayor of the City of Marion, do hereby proclaim April 2019 as Fair Housing Month and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support fair housing for all.
Thank you.
Welcome. I think we got
Sure. Okay. Hi, I'm Kim Gordon. I'm a commissioner with the Marion Civil Rights Commission. We meet the first Wednesday of each month. We are an outreach and an education commission. We participate in a lot of community events and just want to make everyone in Marion aware that the commission is available for them in the event that they need some additional information. They feel that there is possible discrimination, and we welcome everyone to attend our meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim.
Oh.
Okay, on to the presentations. We have a couple of presentations this evening. First is regarding 520 12th Street and 525 11th Street project. Mr. Joe Hill. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Do you have my address?
Please state your name and your address. And
Okay, my name is Joe Hill, and my address is 1325 Pacific Coast Highway, San Diego, 92101.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for having me back. Since we talked last time, and there's been a lot of things going on back and forth with all the different people in all the different departments. And first, I got to tell you that I'm very excited. And just before the meeting began tonight, I could see that the people I talked to were excited about the direction we're doing with these saving the houses. I think the most important thing is that I'm saving history. And I think it's important to remember our past before we go forward. And I also think that it creates housing, which I think driving around Marion, everybody needs more housing for different things, for the neighborhoods. It improves the neighborhood dramatically, and it increases the property taxes because where the houses are going to be moved to, it's been vacant for quite a long time, and there's going to be capital improvement to improve it. With that said, I'll just give you an update on what I have done with, not by myself, but the help of many people. I finalized the purchase of the lots where the homes are going to go to on the corner of 4th and 9th. We have started to clean up the home that is there, which was quite not in the best of shape, and so it's starting to look a little, the neighbors are very pleased with what we've done there. I've met with David Hockett and Gary Hansen regarding the zoning, the variances, and the vacating the alleys, and they're preparing a timeline on the city's end, what I need to do and what the city wants of me and what they want of my architect going forward. We submitted the paperwork for vacating the alleys last week, and then there will be the hearings and stuff going forward. I've talked to the neighbors on the alleys, and so far there's been no resistance, being the same offer that I have made on another alley that I purchased, that I will maintain it, I will pave it, and they will have complete unfettered access to it. I just need it for the property itself. I've talked with the movers, the Goodwin House Moving. They provided me with a hard number contract. The hard number contract is $200,000, which is what initially it was like $235,000, $240,000, $200,000, and they wanted to know the time frame. And I said I was meeting with the city council tonight, and so we can plan accordingly on when to set their date. They're renting the equipment to move it, so we have to have hard dates for them, but we have to prep the houses first before we get to that point. Once the houses are prepped, we'll bring them down and they can look at them and tell me exactly what steps we're going to need. I've met with, I'm working with the historical people because I want to make sure we memorialize what we're doing as far as where we're going with the abstracts and just the different components of the houses and stuff that I want to understand, so that I can maintain everything that I can maintain. Judith and Lynette have been very helpful in that regard over there. Let's see here. As soon as we're set to go on vacating, to cleaning out the house, anybody that's been in the home sees that there's a lot of debris and there's a lot of stuff in there. And so we're set to go on that. Once the houses are cleaned out, we have to clean out the basements. Then we bring in the structural engineer to tell us what areas we need to take off some lath and plaster because I need to cable it and to prep it for a move. And then we need to get the movers down to see what areas of the basement we need to cut out to put the beams and stuff to insert underneath. It's an expensive project, and lots of it in the move itself, but in even the prep in the house. And it's the expense just to prep to get the house ready to move before we go. I'll have over $50,000 in just the prepping of the house. So that would be removing the porches, the garages, the cleaning the houses out, cleaning out the basements. All the plumbing has to come out. The asbestos has to come out. The ductwork, the chimneys. There's a lot of things there. But I'm ready. The process is ready, and we're trying to get it all lined up. I had to visit with Lon this evening on getting the contractor on the hold harmless agreement on going forward that way there. I know that in talking to Steve at the last meeting, he brought up, I don't live here, but I have a lot of people that are involved in this, and a lot of people that are very, they're happy to be involved because it's something that's fun, because they see the benefit to the area. They're Marion people, and so they, and I always solicit ideas and try to involve people in the process. And so, you assemble quite a few from Kyle, the architect, to the plumbers and heating people I met with this morning, to the contractor I'm meeting tomorrow, to the concrete basement people that I'm meeting with, and to just the general maintenance and cleanup guys. I make everybody part of a team, the kind of a thing they can call me anytime, and we kind of go forward. And I get excited. It's something that I look forward to get it going and complete it. We put in the memorandum of understanding, I went back and forth with I've lost my train of thought here. We went back and forth on the dates, and I know that we're up against a May. You guys ever wanted everything done by May? There's just no way with all the different things that we've got to do. We put in the memorandum of understanding the end of December for the moving the houses, and then the spring of 2021 to having the project completed. And I know that was important as far as it related to the tax incentives and stuff for the city and that kind of thing. So that's basically what's been done since the last month that I was here. So I would say if anybody has questions or to ask me, I'm more than willing to answer anything.
Questions?
No, I think it's great. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate your taking on this project. Of course, we still have the vote on the agreement coming up later in the meeting, but
Right.
assuming that all goes well, I just want to thank you for.
Well, and I talked to the mayor beforehand, and one of the things I want to do is we want to document it, and document it in photo and video, because this is something that's that we want some people going and going forward, looking back and see what was done, where we started and how we got to it. I think it's a neat process because it could set a precedent going forward on saving history. So,
Yeah,
thank you.
I think we are setting a precedent and an example for other communities. I just want to, thank the council for when I asked to slow down the process when these houses were slated to be demolished. The council did support me on that, and I really appreciate that, and appreciate everyone who remained open to the possibility that we could actually save these houses and that we could have a viable project. And of course, it required someone like you to show up and say you're interested.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people weren't expecting that to happen.
Well, it's a challenge, and I've met a lot of new friends, and
So,
and
as you said, we have to know where we've been to know where we're going
Right.
as a community. Marion, as a community, is very proud of its history, and we do have a long history, longer than all of Lynn County. And so it's a wonderful thing to be able to say to the residents of Marion that we care about the history, that we're doing what we can to preserve it. As insignificant as one little building may seem, it's part of a bigger picture of what makes this place so special. And really, I'm just so pleased with the outcome of this, and everyone, like I said, remaining open to the possibility that there could be a viable project here that could be used as an example going forward for our community and for other communities. So, thank you.
I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye.
Okay. I see the smiling chief coming forward. He's happy to share some plans with us. So, are you taking the lead here, Chief? Or
No, actually,
Okay.
I'm going to let OPN take
Okay.
the lead.
wonderful. So we have a presentation on the new fire station plans, and we have the architects here. So please introduce yourself. You have to state your name and address like everyone else, and proceed.
Dave Sorg, OPN Architects, 205th Avenue Southeast. So thanks for the opportunity to present. We're excited to show you where we are. We've completed concept design. Chief Crable and Assistant Chief Hansen have been great to work with. They provided really timely information, timely feedback. And with me today, I have Brett Virgil, who's put together all of the 3D work that you'll see. Usually I try to take credit for it, but that doesn't, usually people don't believe me because I can't do any of it. And then Landenberg, our project manager, interestingly, he just built a house and he has a working fire pole in his house. So they use it to go up and down between first and second floor. So I am going to show you, we're going to start with what it is we're designing. So the program for the building, what we've been asked to do. We had a visioning meeting with the chief, assistant chief, and the building committee, which is composed of firefighters. And then we're going to talk about biophilic design, which is a key driver here. And then we're going to put together a series of diagrams that show how the pieces fit together. And then we'll finish with a couple videos, both the exterior and the interior. You can ask questions and stop us at any time. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the program, starting with the RFP, it was very clear what the goals and objectives were for the project. Not very often do we get a program that's almost still exact. It's almost like what it was to begin with. So that was great. Typically, we have to do all the interviews and do that work. And there was also, and I'm going to really focus on biophilic design. In the RFP, it talked about biophilic design, and I know that's very important to the city, and I know, Tom, a lot of what you've been doing. It is something that has a lot to do with the health and wellness of the firefighters and to reduce PTSD. And the challenge was set to be a national showcase for how biophilic design can reduce PTSD in firefighters. So again, as a significant driver for the project. So for the program, we have an apparatus bay, and it's too deep. We're thinking of this as a 75-year building, so we can accommodate what might happen in the future. It's 3 bays wide, and it's a drive-through lane. The op support, and we're going to, again, you'll see this develop in both the diagrams and the floor plan. The chief will actually go through the floor plans. The op support, which needs to be directly adjacent to the apparatus bay, and then the classroom, it's a 100-seat classroom. It's a storm shelter, and it's also an emergency response room. Then the administration area, and then the living area, which will be on the 2nd floor. Developed out of our visioning meeting, some of it was in the RFP, and then some follow-up conversations. These are the driving factors, so not surprisingly, efficiency and flow. I mean, we were counting footsteps, counting feet. How quickly can people get from the dorms, from the day room, to the apparatus bay for emergency response? And again, that was a huge driver. Biophilia, as we just talked about. Community connection and transparency is very important. This is a community building. There's a sense of pride that goes along with firefighters. So there's, you'll see in the diagrams and the 3D how transparency was a driver. And being a good neighbor, that's a big deal. This is a building that really mediates or responds between the neighborhood, as well as across the street will be the new YMCA, and the development, which might include a big box store. So this isn't just like, hey, this needs to be a picture of building to fit in. This is working between 2 different project types. And then we also focused on things like light pollution. So if we have more glass, it's not facing the neighborhood, and then we have a dense tree grove to really provide a nice buffer. Training focused, we'll get into that. And green roof and roof terraces. When we talked early on, that was a major driver because we were looking at a 1-story versus a 2-story. 2-story, there are a lot of reasons why it's a 2-story, but one of them was specifically they really wanted the opportunity to look out onto a green roof and roof terraces. So from a sustainability and biophilia perspective, sustainable aspects, we are interested in LEED. We don't know if we're going for LEED yet, but that's something that we're certainly looking at. This is a sustainable enough and energy efficient building. If we go after LEED, it will be a LEED silver project. We won't have to worry about that or do anything different. We would just have to go through the paperwork to make that happen. We are looking at, we will have geothermal, energy recovery, ventilation systems, LED lighting, optimized solar orientation, which means we're orienting the building true north-south and minimizing glazing on the east and west, which has the harsh sun. Local materials, pervious pavers in the parking lot, and then prairie grass. And just to know the level of detail that we get in, like when we like the idea of prairie grass up against the building, that's very much one of the 14 keys for biophilic design. But then we got into critters and rodents that could be in this. So we have, when you see the 3D, there'll be a brownish orange colored grass. That will be the prairie grass. And as we get closer to the building, it'll be a manicured lawn to take that into account. And then for biophilic aspects, we have the green roofs, the roof terraces. Biophilic design essentially means connection to nature. And if you think about, if you ask people where they want to work, where they want to go, typically people are going to say something that's connected to nature. And so that's something that I think you will see this design does well. Natural light, operable windows, not only, which it's a code requirement for the dorm rooms, but it's also something we're doing in the offices. It's very training focused with the training pond, the training stair. We have a Zen tree garden that you will see connections to nature on both levels. It's close to the trail, and another important piece was how we worked hard to separate the dorms in the living area from the apparatus bay, so people didn't feel, so they got that separation, but also were very close from a emergency response perspective. So you can see the yellow star. There's Tower Terrace Road. Irish Drive will come around. I think all of you know where this is. It's ESCO's right up the street, and then directly across the street on Tower Terrace will be the new YMCA. So we're going to go through a series of diagrams. Again, if you have any questions, please stop me. This is our drive-through 3-bay apparatus bay. You can see Irish Drive is up to the left, and then Tower Terrace to the bottom. North is, you can see to the left, is Tower Terrace. The front face of this faces Tower Terrace because that's where most people will see it, most people will drive by, and from an emergency response perspective, It allows direct access. So next to it is the op support, and then the classroom, and the administration. And then one of the things that the RFP had is it had a lobby and then a museum part. And what happens typically in a lobby, it's usually a 2-story space. You come in and people are in it for about 2 seconds and they move out of it. And this isn't, we wanted to use every square foot as wisely as we could to take advantage. We want to be wise with the taxpayers' dollars. So we looked at not having buried circulation. This is a 10-foot wide corridor that connects all the spaces, and that becomes the lobby. There's an entrance vestibule that will be outside of that, will be used as like a safe room where if someone's in a duress moment, they can come in and jump into or go into the vestibule, and then it locks automatically. But the lobby is the corridor, and then behind it in the classroom wall will be the museum, which I know there's a lot of proud history. You mentioned the history in Marion. There's a lot of memorabilia as well as some training like on how things can burn that they would like to show off in that area. So moving to the second floor, in the RFP, the fitness room was supposed to, we want people to use this room, so it was supposed to either look into the apparatus bay or to the exterior. We were able to accommodate both. And then across from it, the support, that's laundry, storage, and elevator. Then we have the dorm rooms with not only direct visual access to the exterior, but the operable windows. And then the day room, which is the kitchen, the dining area, and the living space. And as was discussed, the green roof, and then now the roof terrace. And you can also see the retention pond to the upper left, which will be used for training and some ice rescue. Then the training stair, one of the things that we've done when we talked about efficiency is we didn't want an extra stair. So we have to have 2 stairs by code, and we wanted one of those stairs to be the training stair as well. But what we found is that because the training stair is wider and it has cutouts for training, it wasn't the best from an emergency response perspective. So this is a 3rd stair used exclusively for training. It does provide access to the roof, and it can be as a hose drying tower as well. So it's really serving multiple functions at the same time, and it's pretty industrial. It will be the metal grate, but it will be a great asset for this building, and will include firefighters from all the different buildings. And then what the yellow is showing is we have a roof, but what we're able to do, we were able to take the floor to floor and push them down to 14 foot, again, to be very efficient. Reducing the height, again, is being a good neighbor. And we were able to do that by having some exposed structural wood deck for the roof. So you can imagine in the apparatus bay, and you'll see this, it's a wood ceiling essentially, but it's also the roof deck with some exposed ductwork for return air. And then that also shows up in the day room, and then is to the far right where we have our outdoor space, it turns into a trellis, which will, where outdoor space was desired, they didn't want to be on display, they didn't want to have direct sun, and they didn't want wind, so that helps accommodate that. And then that's our Zen Garden tree grove. So when you walk, everybody uses the same circulation. As you walk through that circulation, you always have the Zen Garden to your left, and it'll have the Zen rocks, really focusing in on that biophilic design. And then you can see the number 1. And is that clear? Does everybody understand why this is 1? All right, perfect. So, Chief's going to talk about the site plan, the floor plans, and then we'll follow up with the video. All right? You want me to?
No, go ahead and forward it to the floor plan.
Oh, okay. I didn't. There we go.
Okay, it's kind of hard to see on here, but as Dave was saying, this was really quite a project in trying to get this all together. But we worked hard on it. So just to explain, this is the first floor that you're looking at now. The pink area, of course, is the apparatus floor. You can see how the trucks are parked in there. To the right of that, you see some red rooms. Those red rooms are our support area for our SCBAs, our air packs. It'll have air compressor to fill our air bottles, those kind of things. It also has a workshop because we do a lot of the maintenance on our trucks ourselves. So we've always learned how to do that and change valves and things like that. So you got to have a workbench and a workshop. So that's there too. storage for extra equipment. So that's all along that east wall, which would be on the right of the picture. And then the white spot in between those red rooms is the training tower. Then you move to the left of the apparatus bay, and there's more red rooms. As I talked to you about 2 weeks ago at our last meeting, I talked about the cancer causing and how NFPA now is really pushing departments to do something about that with the burns on our gear. They want us to clean. In fact, the new rule is going to be shower in an hour to get that stuff off of us. So this is our decon area, this red area. This will be where, when they get back from a fire, they'll go into here. There'll be gear extractor machines, which takes the gear and it cleans it and gets that cancer-causing stuff off. They'll immediately go into showers and a clean room, and then in the clean room they'll get new clothes, new bunker gear, and then go on with their day. But it's a decon area, which is very important. Also in that red area is the shift officer's office. It looks out on the apparatus bay so you can keep an eye on everybody. And then there's a report room right off of that for the firefighters to write medical and fire reports. Then there's an elevator there next to it in the IT storage room. But the blue part is our classroom. And this area will be fortified to withstand an F4 tornado. I have found out that cities over 50,000 people, FEMA really would like them to have their own emergency operations center, meaning if there was ever a disaster here in Marion, we would need our own operations center that's protected. And so we want to make that room our city's operations center. So that's why it's fortified and ready to go. All the mechanical of the building is in that area also, so it's all contained and protected. Then the green area is our office area for the administration. And as he said, this is for 75 to 100 years into the future. We plan on keeping it, just like we have Station 3 on 8th Avenue. Did you catch that? Station 3 on 8th Avenue. That's been there since the 60s, and that's the way fire departments are. If you go anywhere in the country, fire stations, when you build them, they remain fire stations. And they continue to be that for as long until they fall down. So that's the way this building's also going to be. So then to the next. The second floor, the pink, again, is the apparatus floor, which it will be tall enough. The red area and the training tower on the right. The red area, it's going to be a mezzanine area, and I visited quite a few fire stations that had this type of mezzanine area, and they put in some really great training opportunities in these areas. So that's what we want to do with this. So it'll have its own training area on the mezzanine and in the training tower. Then off to the left of the apparatus bay is the living quarters, the fitness room, the laundry areas, the dorms, and then, as you all know, when you visit our stations, we live there for 24 hours. We spend a third of our life in there. We're a family, and so it's really important on how we live together and get along together, and so in between those calls. And so we live there. And the stress of the job, I talked about before, the PTSD, that's why this building came out to be the way it is and the way you'll see. I think it's really going to be a very beneficial to the guys and the stress that comes with that job. So that's the building. The green area around that is the green roof. Stormwater management was really taken into consideration by Chief Hansen and myself. We thought it was important and we plan on having pavers in some areas to help with that. So it should be really great. So I'm just going to turn it back over unless you have any questions about the floor plan. Yes.
This is the first time I've heard you talk about this decon area.
Yes.
So is that something that is going to have to be put into the other fire stations,
Yes.
2 and 3,
Yes,
in the future?
it's probably
then?
going to be passed in the National Fire Protection Agency standards in the
Okay.
next year.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Councilmember Draper has a question.
Chief?
Yeah.
One of those bays big enough for our new aerial?
Yes.
Thank you.
And as I said before, we're building it for 50 years out. Let's say area ambulance suddenly folds up or anything like that, and now we have to provide our own ambulance service. We've built this to be that. So we're looking at the future. So hopefully this will keep us in business.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
So you can see, it may look like, well, we just put together a series of boxes and kind of shoved them together, and it is a very, very efficient plan, both two-dimensionally and three-dimensionally. It's based on a 3'6" grid. Again, we want this to do everything it should, but do it as cost-effectively as we can. However, we're excited to show you what this can turn into three-dimensionally. So we're going to show you a quick video. I hope it plays here. Hit it again. Okay, you're going to open the folder. All right. That was bad. So while we're waiting, any other questions?
You could speak into the microphone, though, because these meetings are recorded, so.
There's no room for me.
Right as you start, you'll notice
Are we getting rolling? Oh.
a pond. We have to have water retention.
Yes.
And we've decided that we want it to be a wet area so we can do ice training, drafting, all the training that we'll need to do with a wet pond. So that's why you see it the way you do. We are going to
Like
have
dealing
that.
with the geese.
Yes. with the geese.
You're helping, you're out.
Put a strainer on that intake.
Helping your neighborhood, Nick.
Thank you, Brett.
Very nice.
A glass.
So you can start to see the exterior terrace there with the louver or the sunscreen. And then on the far left is the walkway that connects the building. You look outside one direction, then you look into the apparatus bay the other direction. It's the day room you see in the upper left with the terrace. Then there's a more private terrace on the south side that you can see smaller. And then those vertical slots are the dorm room windows. And then to the right, that glass area is the fitness room. And then we're seeing back into the apparatus bay. And as we go to the right, the stairs, the training stair is a polycarbonate glass material. So it's not transparent, it's translucent. And we wanted to show, we look at things day, evening.
Chief, will you be able to dry hoses in that tower?
That's why we have it.
Yep. Yeah, there are no added curves or angles, and the only thing that goes above that 28-foot line is the training stair because that's what we needed. And then as we move into the front entrance, for the public conference room, we will probably add a frit on that so it's not quite so transparent. You can see every time you look down a hallway, you're always connecting to the exterior based on that biophilic design. And then here you can see down at the end, you can see the fire trucks. And then in that wood area, which is the only wood on the first floor, is the museum. Now we're looking, the kitchen is on the right, the community table dining areas to the far right, and then on the left are the two different seating areas for the firefighters. And then you can see the outdoor terrace beyond. Then the stair that connects down into the administration area below for direct access. And as you can see on both TVs, they're watching firefighter shows. So
I was going to see what show that was.
I'm thinking a lot of Windex.
and then peeking into the fitness area, and then we'll look into the apparatus bay and actually go down the pole here in a second. And then seeing the training stair, and then the mezzanine above, which will be used for additional training. So where we can just use simply polished concrete, that's what we're doing. We're adding only carpet in areas that we need it for basically sound. Oh, you're gonna go back, okay.
Okay.
Then we just end on, there's a final image, but I'm sorry. I know, I'm sorry.
Could you talk about this has got a lot of glass. I mean, it looks really cool. It looks neater than most hotels I've stayed in. But could you talk about, with all the glass on this, the energy efficiency? Because I think certain people would say, wow, that's not very energy efficient, having all of that glass. Now you got to really cool it a lot in the summertime. Yeah. So could you kind of talk about that aspect of it so that we have those talking points?
Yeah, absolutely. The Cedar Rapids Public Library is a similar project in the sense that it had glass where you wanted glass and transparency, both views of the exterior as well as letting the daylight in, and that's a LEED Platinum project. So it's not how much glass is important, and we're currently doing the study of percentage of glass versus not glass, and that is an important criteria, both for the energy code and us to design responsibly. But this glass, so what we've done when you orient the building true north-south, all of this glass on the front is facing north, so there's no heat gain, no direct sun whatsoever, zero. On the sides, you can see we either have translucent glass, which performs much better than vision glass. That's on the left-hand side, and then to the right-hand side, we have the basically we call like a Venetian blind, or the pergola with the louvers that protects that side from sun. And then on the south side, what we'll use is we'll use a frit on the glass, which will reduce the heat gain. And we have a very efficient energy system with the geothermal. So we have, and I should say this, Tate Walker, who was part of the interview, wasn't able to be here tonight, but he is someone he actually helped write the latest version of LEED. So he's that involved on a national level from a sustainability perspective, and so we're working closely with him.
Might just explain, I mean, probably some
LEED?
people, but just for everyone's sake.
Of course. Thank you, Mayor. LEED refers to Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's a rating system, a third-party rating system that's been around now for well over a decade, and it's something that some jurisdictions require. The United States Courthouse was required to be a LEED building, for example, and it's something, again, we're interested in. But what it is, even if we don't pursue it, it's a great metric. Are we designing this building sustainably? And so we're constantly going back to that as a checkpoint. Did that answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Lau Park facility is a LEED building, correct? Yeah.
And the Thomas Park facility also.
Sure. Okay.
So did that? Okay.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Any other questions? All right. We have one more slide. How about cost?
I have only one other thing.
Sure.
That is that I would like to welcome OPN back to Marion, Iowa.
Thank you.
And we're now have enough space where you guys could come back.
Well, I appreciate that. Interestingly, so we are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, and it all did start in Marion, Iowa.
That fit within our rules of... I truthfully don't care if it does.
All right.
Dave, did you say it'll be a geothermal?
Yes, geothermal, correct. Yeah, that's a really important point on two levels. Number one, it's very energy efficient, and we do long-term maintenance and life cycle cost is a huge part of this. We're constantly thinking about that. It's not just upfront cost, and that's part of what makes it a 75-plus year building. But what it also does, if you look at this building and being a good neighbor, it doesn't have anything on the roof. It's not 28 feet plus another 12 feet of some sort of enclosure around rooftop units. So with the geothermal, we don't have that on the roof. So the final slide we want to talk about is cost. It is an important piece. So this is from a Design Awards. It's a journal that comes out every year. There were 19 fire stations across the country cited in this. And they do a great job of not only showing you the design, talking about the key attributes of the building, but they talk about cost and cost per square foot. So we use this. We took the 19 stations that were completed in 2017 and 18, and it's basically a combination of both. And so inflation, while 5% probably isn't enough of what's happening with inflation over the last couple of years, we're using it here just to be conservative. So if you just add 5%, which would be 1 year of inflation, that's $330 a square foot, and add 2 years at that, we're at $346. So this building is coming in, and that's really easy to read here. $7.24 million, that's $334 a square foot. So when you compare that to this, we're on the lower side of what fire stations across the country are costing today.
Okay. I think Councilmember Jensen had another question.
Question is, are you going to tell us what the start date and completion date is? We had the preliminary in the past, so since he's here today, I want to hear what those dates are.
Okay, so we are wrapping up the documents in July, and then there'll be a month to have it bid. So by September, you should be starting construction.
September, okay.
Yep. And the point was, and the whole schedule was based on the fact that we want to take advantage of this construction season and not have extra costs from winter conditions.
And this is a one year to complete, based on what you said before, but a little later start than what we last heard about, so that's fine. Okay.
Yeah, but we were still looking at June 1st, I
Okay.
think, weren't we?
It might be July.
Yeah.
I'd have, it's,
Finish.
The construction documents. I think it's July. It's July 1. So,
There you go.
yeah, but we will get in. That allows us to get in before, again, winter conditions would start up. So any other questions or comments?
I have just a quick one. This will be a self-driven question. What exhaust system did you decide to go with on that? Is that the perforated? No, there's no ceiling to it, right? So I didn't see flow vents in there.
We have not decided yet.
Oh,
We're still
that's-
working with the mechanical engineers on that.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah. It all depends on the cost.
Which will be under, right, but Dave?
I'm sorry?
Will be under cost.
We
Budget?
will be on budget.
Excellent.
But I have to qualify that. We do cost estimates. We have one cost estimate done. That's done at the end of concept design. So that's essentially what you've seen. We'll do another one at the end of design development. So we might have 75 sheets of drawings at the time that are 50 to 75% complete. Then we'll do 1 or 2 during construction documents. And so that cost estimate will get updated. And we use a third-party estimator called Stecker Hermsen out of Ames, Iowa. They do most of the estimating for architects in the state, and we'll feel very good as we update each one. But again, we know how to fill in the gaps, and we have conversations with, okay, yeah, there aren't very many drawings, but what are the assumptions here? So we went through the materials and all of the different heights and square footages.
Excellent. Great news. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Looks great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the presentations. We'll proceed with the agenda. Consent agenda. Mr. Sternad.
Okay. Let's see. Was there any, did we have any?
Public forum section, public forum.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Inadvertently skipped a section here. Okay, so at this time we have a time for public comments on topics that are listed on the agenda but not associated with a public hearing. If there's a public hearing, then there will be an opportunity to speak at that time about the matter. If there's anything on the agenda that is not a public hearing that anyone is here to address the council on, this is the time to come forward and do that. Okay? I don't see anyone coming forward, so we will proceed then with the consent agenda.
Did we, I'm sorry, I have not heard from anybody. Was there anything that needed to be pulled from the consent? No? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move forward. Your Honor, I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as follows. Please note I do have one item that's going to be pulled here. This will be items A1 through A5 and A6, I'm going to call it subchapter B through F3. Just for reference, I'm pulling 6A out for separate consideration, and this will be resolutions 27537 through 27554.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of item 6A, which will be considered separately. And that includes resolutions 27537 through 27554. Any discussion on that motion? Yes, ma'am?
I just wanted to ask, want to just say Ryan, Mr. Miller, about B1, Public Services, the rental of the, this is the street sweeper, I believe, for $17,600. I had some questions for him about, I think it's a 2-month rental. I thought it was a lot of money, and I asked if it's something we should look into acquiring, and I thought his answer was worth, if you could explain why we're not purchasing and we are renting.
Sure. Typically, we have 2 sweepers as part of our rolling stock. 3 years ago, one of our sweepers was involved in a collision. It was totaled. We received a settlement for it from the insurance company. We receipted those funds in our reserves account to replace our equipment. Ever since then, we've been renting an additional sweeper unit until we get some direction on the eco park. At that time, we would probably consider going to a compressed natural gas sweeper. So during the spring and fall season, we typically rent a sweeper to supplement our activities, especially this year. So we'll need an extra month this year for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I just like that we were thinking forward about keeping the fleet with the move to compressed natural gas, if that's how we're going to go for all of that savings we're hoping to realize. So I appreciated the detail on that. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments or questions on that motion? All right, we'll vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Okay, the motion has been approved.
Will's going to pull the second one back.
Okay.
Your Honor, I make a motion to approve the following hold harmless agreement. St. Joe's Fun Days, May 31st through June 2nd of 2019, 1790 14th Street, Marion. That's from St. Joseph's Church, 1790 14th Street.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the hold harmless agreement with St. Joseph's Fun Days, May 31st through June 2nd, 2019. Discussion. Okay. Oh, you just wanted a separate vote on it?
Yes, I have to abstain from this one.
Oh, because you, okay.
Oh, that's, okay.
All right. Okay, no discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. And those abstaining?
One abstention.
Okay, so we have one abstention, and the remaining votes are in favor. So the motion is approved. For the next section, I will turn over the gavel to the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda with Mayor Abouasley's abstention from voting and discussion as followed, and they'll be including items A1 through F1, resolutions 27555 to 27557.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda with Mayor Abouasley's abstention from voting and discussion on items A1 through F1, resolutions 27555 through 27557. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. And we have one do we have to abstain?
Yeah, that's
We have the abstention. Thank you.
Sorry.
Motion
Yeah.
carries.
Right.
And I'll relinquish that back to the mayor.
Okay, on to the regular agenda under Administrative Services.
Your Honor, I move to approve ordinance number 19-06, amending Chapter 17 of the Code of Ordinances relating to council. This is the initial consideration.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 19-06. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion is approved.
Your Honor, I move to approve resolution number 27533, adopting a revenue purpose statement regarding use of revenues from proposed gas and electric franchise fees pursuant to Iowa Code Section 364.2 4F, tabled 3/21/2019.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 27533, adopting a revenue purpose statement regarding the use of revenues from the proposed gas and electric franchise fees. Discussion.
Have we agreed upon the percentage that we were going
We
to
have
put in
not.
that statement?
Yeah.
Does that need to be part of this discussion?
I did update the resolution based on the conversation that was had on Monday, but there is a blank one, I believe, still floating around that doesn't have that filled in. It's pretty easy. We can amend that and change that to a different percentage, but I filled in what seemed to be the general consensus at the time.
Which was what?
At the time, you guys had talked to going up to 100%.
Okay.
That was the discussion on Tuesday.
Right.
And we did have a couple members not here, so I'd like to hear from them too.
I'll jump in here. In listening to that recording, I did pay close attention to our audios as well as the agenda while being absent on Tuesday. Could we just circle back around for a little explanation again on this? If I'm understanding it correctly, we've got two categories. Those categories are public safety, and the other one is just simply a blanket tax relief. Is that a correct assumption?
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess I do have a concern. I just want to call this out, and maybe somebody can help put me at ease on this one, is I'm a little concerned about creating a line item budget or a category. To me, this looks just like a local option sales tax line item, if you will. And how that has been operated in the past is same scenario, categories of infrastructure and, correct me if I'm wrong, transportation, I believe was the second category in the local option sales tax?
Infrastructure and then community projects.
Community projects, thank you. Thanks for that clarification. I just wanted to make sure that we had the transparency of being able to show, we're creating a bucket, so to speak, where we're going to have this cash flow coming in. And I just want to make sure that we're not placing ourselves in a position at all levels of the city of being able to classify something that would fall under public safety or something that would fall in underneath that, what is kind of unknown as a tax relief. To me, that feels like it's an open, no description category. And I just want to make sure that we can classify those things. So, for example, we don't all of a sudden throw in the approach ramps on the sidewalks and call that public safety, and we're putting things in where they shouldn't be. That's my only concern with this. So if we're going to adopt something or develop something, I want to make sure it's got that language in there that we see. I just don't want to create that opportunity to laterally move monies around in a category that we have not had in the past that would allow us to dip into that just because of maybe what we call it. Those are just some concerns that I have. And again, those could be dismissed, but I thought it was valid enough to bring it amongst the rest of the council members.
So do you have a suggestion on how to change that? I mean, how would you address that?
Going back to as I was going down Interstate 80 at the speed limit of 70 miles an hour, had a lot of windshield time to think about that. It would be difficult, as Mr. Jensen said, to create a category that would say 50%, and then all of a sudden we find that bucket full and our hands would be tied, and yet we couldn't use that money, or we didn't properly allocate projects within the realms of that budget. It would require a lot of work on our budget, and our budget's already difficult to work with. We found that this year as well as we tried to balance that, right? We wanted to bring on more personnel. We felt there was things that needed to be done, and yet we had to really make the city manager, the budget individuals, everybody participate in trying to figure out where we're going to come up with that. That would be a lot more work as well too. So I don't know. I don't know if I have the answer to that, but I'm just trying to bring up those concerns that I have of, as we move forward, there will be a lot of expenses, and we've all kind of made comment about finding monies in categories to pay for things that were either unfunded or underfunded to complete projects. So just a concern I have.
Yeah, Councilmember Draper.
I think that's I think that's a good point. When we think about, and I probably won't be around, but when you think about next year's budget, how are we gonna handle that? So we know, it's like if we, when we do the census, if we suddenly were 60,000 people, how do you handle that? So I think it's wise that as you budget next year, you have some idea of what you're going to do with the overage or underage. It could go either direction. But I know in the past, I've always kidded Lon, we'll have something come up towards the end of the year, and Lon magically will find some money somewhere. And, we're going to have more and more things over the next 5 years than this city has ever seen, and we need to be prepared, and that's what I think you have a valid argument on it, or a valid statement, and that let's do it now. Let's figure out how we're going to handle that and move forward from there.
Mr. Jensen?
I agree. I think the responsibility on how we're going to manage this money and how we're going to make sure it's used in the most effective manner resides upon the city council. Okay, so the city's going to put together an effective budget on recommending how that money can be spent. I do believe for the fiscal year 2020, we are spending it very effectively with the safety people that we are bringing on. We may not have that need. My comment Tuesday was we may not have that need to that extent every year.
Right.
But to the extent we're going to be starting, again, everybody knows I have been pushing for a long time about putting together our 5-year plan. I believe once we put together when we put our first 5-year plan together, that's going to lay out a pretty good roadmap on how that money is going to be used. Because one, it's either going to reflect additional personnel and cost in the safety area to the extent that that is not documented and supported by City Council. The rest of that money should be going towards property tax relief, and we should be able to see a reduction in our levy rate as a result of that. So, again, I'm saying that pretty simplistically, but there's a lot of homework left to do that. I do agree with Randy. We do need to make sure we find a way to manage this because this is a lot of additional money. But I also believe that putting together a franchise fee is, as we use the majority of it for safety purposes, is one of the most equitable way for everybody in the community to be paying some of that cost going forward versus all of it coming out of property taxes. So there's a lot of nonprofits, other entities not paying property taxes, getting the benefit of all of our safety personnel. And I think this is a way that it makes it more equitable for everybody throughout the community that are getting the benefit of those. So that's one of the reasons I do like it. I think it's more fair, and I do think it's incumbent upon us to find the proper way to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I too agree with Randy, and I hate to not have a solution to throw out there as well, but I think we spent so much time on this year's budget and we really dog-eared where the money is going this year. I'm comfortable with that, but I would like to revisit next year the revenue statement, whatever the heck, and maybe get a little more specific and know where it's being allocated specifically for next year. But this year with the positions and the other things that, we really line-itemed that. But I just want to make sure it's I don't know if we add, for this year or for what have you, so that it comes up and we have to vote again next year on the language for that. I don't want to just vote on this here and then we never get specific after next year's budget meetings.
So
Does that make sense?
you would accept the up to 100%?
For this year, because I feel very comfortable about where the funds are going that we're going to collect, because we stated positions that were going to happen, mostly related to public safety, et cetera. Next year, the revenues that come in, I think we need to be real specific about how we want those spent so that we know, like to Randy's point, what projects are out there that might be underfunded or need need money, and so money's being taken from this particular bucket. Does that make sense?
I think it's part of just the budget management, the process that we go through.
At the budget meeting, right?
Yeah, that whole
that's what-
process, I think that's where that all comes out.
I mean, you're going to be able to,
So-
through the budgeting process, be able to manage.
That's how you manage it.
We'll see in the budget that money that's coming in and then allocate it at the budget meetings and not up here.
That's
That's
our
what you're saying.
responsibility to ask those questions and make sure it's done fiscally responsibly.
Okay.
Through the budgeting process.
Right,
And you know the dollar amount then, too.
yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Your Honor, I just have a question. So I think, Renee, you asked a good question, and how long, when we approve this statement, how long is it in effect, right? Is it something we do revisit on a regular basis?
I think we'll allow the city attorney to answer that.
We can pass one, and we can leave it in place for as long as it serves our purpose. We can pass a resolution amending it should we need to do so. So, for example, for this particular year, if you know that all of this money is going to go to one particular area, we can pass that. The purpose of the revenue purpose statement is to give a broad idea. We don't have to state, and we should not state specific projects or anything in the revenue purpose statement. That is to kind of put the public on notice of what the broad area is, and then those allocations would come up later as we start expending those funds. But for purposes of this statement, we pick which broad areas we would potentially use those funds for to give both the public notice, and we also have to give the Department of Revenue notice. So that's where this goes.
Okay. Mr. Jensen.
So to clarify, so make sure everybody understands, in future years, almost on an annual basis, we have the opportunity to not only change the revenue purpose statement, but also to change the percentage.
Yes. You mean the percentage for property tax relief?
No, I'm sorry, the percentage of the franchise fee.
Yes, we can amend the percentage of the franchise fee in the future. To
Right.
do so, we do have to do an amended ordinance, but that does not require us to, like right now I'm negotiating the ordinances in general with each of the utilities, which has been the biggest aspect of this. In the future, should we decide we want to change the percentage, then we publish notice and we have 3 readings and amend the ordinance, and we give the utilities notice. There is a provision for that in each of the ordinances. So that can happen at any time too, so long as we follow the proper procedure of having the public hearing.
Right.
Yes. Mr. Cernan.
Lon, could you just give us, when we throw around percentages again, what was our anticipated first year revenues in this particular category? Could you just refresh our memory, please? That's the first of 2 questions, and I'll ask the second one in just a second.
Sure. For FY20, we had it budgeted at $1,024,000.
Thank you. And then if we were to, for some miraculous issue, have a decrease in our levy tax, would the verbiage within this statement still hold true to be called levy relief when in fact we had a decrease to the levy? I want to make sure we're clear that the title that we give this going forward would be relative in any situation.
Could you clarify that a little bit? Like, you mean if the state were to do something to
Sure.
reduce the levy? Or?
Exactly. So if we are collecting these proceeds for tax relief to keep our levy where it is, that was our intent this year. But in the future, let's say there was a circumstance that would allow us to back down that tax levy, would that definition still hold true in the statement for collecting those taxes?
Yeah, the way I look at it is that anything that's receipted into the general fund that is paying for the types of services in the revenue statement that we would have otherwise had to levy property taxes for, we can calculate that number. So, for example, in the budget for next year that council has already approved, if we were to have to levy property taxes in lieu of the franchise fees, it's about 62 cents per thousand. So your property tax rate at 14.22 would have been 14.84. Had we not had the franchise fees in place. So we'll always be able to calculate what that number is based based on the anticipated revenue coming in from the franchise fees. Beyond that, it's then just demonstrating to the council and the public where we would anticipate the actual use of those funds to go through the general fund.
So by calling it a tax relief, we're okay going forward with it if by definition that title doesn't substantiate a tax relief.
Yeah, and because you got the other piece in there, that we can spend it on public safety, we'd want to be able to demonstrate that we were using it for those purposes. I mean, the ultimate thing would be as if the state just completely revamped the tax code and all of a sudden we didn't have property taxes at all. Say we went to income taxes or all sales taxes or something like that, like you see in some other states. You'd want to then revisit this because you wouldn't even have that option.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you, Lon. Appreciate it.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, we'll vote. All those in favor. Oh, wait. I guess. Well, we had in front of us had the blank, but are we supposed to assume it says 100%?
You have the blank one in front of you right now.
Well, I think what we got in our.
I think the one that you should have should say the 100% now.
Just so it's clear what we're voting on.
Did we go?
And the motion. So the motion made was for the one up to 100%.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So is that clear for everyone? Okay. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. And the motion is approved. At this time, we have a public hearing regarding proposed adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 110 of the Code of Ordinances regarding the natural gas franchise with Mid-American Energy Company, including the addition of franchise fees. Public hearing is now open. Who will give us the briefing on this?
Your Honor, I can do that. First, I'd like to preface this one with saying this is the only one that I cannot guarantee this is a final version of. I have been going back and forth with Mid-American quite a bit, and they would like their operations department to see this before they give me their final go-ahead, and he could not guarantee me that there would not be any substantive changes to it. I have not had the opportunity. There was one particular area that was really a sticking point for them, and so I had to make some changes. I have not had an opportunity to have public services or engineering look at that revision yet either. And as such, for this particular one, it might be, I would recommend that we maybe table this one until the next meeting when I can have a final version.
So we would still have the public hearing, but table the ordinance, voting on the ordinance?
Yes, and my reason for that would be that, well, number one, you would have the opportunity to, or the option to keep the public hearing open until the next meeting if you wanted to as well. But we're not required to have the public hearing at the same day that the ordinance has the first reading. We're only required to have it prior to adopting the final adoption, so the final reading. But I think the biggest concern to the public is going to be what those fees are. But as far as anything else that would affect them, the things that we're kind of looking at changing from the version that you have in front of you is how detailed we get in what standards and codes they have to abide by, and what things we're kind of going to let be a general. They'll follow all the state code type things. They're more of the procedural, how they operate day-to-day, operational type things in the city. There may be somebody in the city who's very, very concerned about that, but I think that's primarily going to be city staff, engineering, and public services who have those concerns. As far as the franchise fees, collection of the franchise fees, timing-wise, they do require 60 days after the passage to be able to put they might be 90 days. I'd have to look at theirs for sure to see what their timeline was. And so it would delay that by 2 weeks if we do table this. Luckily, as they pointed out to me today when I was putting a little pressure on them to get this through, that we're no longer in natural gas high usage season, so that was very kind of them to point out, but I don't see any reason why I wouldn't have a final version next time.
Okay, so we could proceed with the public hearing at this time. Did
Yes.
you want to summarize what the franchise fee is for the benefit of everyone.
Yes, essentially what this will do will be to put the 4% fee on everybody's bill. So the public, everybody who has a Mid-American account in the city of Marion would then see a franchise fee charge on their bill at the end, which would be 4%. And that would be collected monthly, and then I believe it's quarterly that Mid-American would then remit those funds to the city. They are not charging any administration fees for doing that at this time. They just collect those and turn them over. They do have the option under state code to charge us an administrative fee. At this time, neither Mid-American nor Alliant nor Lynn County REC have any administration fees in place. And then the city would have to put that into the fund for the franchise fee usage according to the revenue purpose statement. And the other terms in this include that we are entering into this franchise fee for 25 years with the opportunity to cancel at different increments. I believe with Mid-American, it's at the end of the 15th and 20th year. And sorry, not cancel, renegotiate. That was a very important clarification that we had to make in this.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this measure? Please come forward. Anyone here to speak in opposition? Please come forward. Okay. Have we received any comments to the city outside of this meeting?
We did receive a letter from Medco.
Yep. We all received that. Anything else that we received? Or okay. Okay. So, is there anyone? What's the general feeling about closing the public meeting or keeping it open? Is there a downside to keeping it open?
There's no downside to keeping it open. It doesn't change anything with this procedure.
I make a motion to keep it open.
Okay. Do we need a vote to keep it open, or can we just keep it open?
No, there's no vote to open the public hearing since you do that as mayor, so you can continue the hearing.
So I will, if that's the general consensus of the council, I will keep the public hearing open until the next meeting, and then we'll proceed with that at the next meeting and then close it and then have the vote on your final version of your ordinance.
Your Honor, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Carrie, you had made a comment that our renegotiations could be done at the 10 and 15 year. If any sitting council between now and then chooses to, can they be decreased at any one particular time? Can they be modified within those time parameters as well?
Yes. Actually, our franchise with Mid-American is not up right now, but when we talked about adding this fee, rather than just amending the ordinance, they said, hey, why don't we go ahead and just redo the entire thing right now? Let's do the renewal now rather than wait. But for modifying the franchise fee amount, that does not require renegotiation of the ordinance.
And that would be with any of the carriers that we're currently seeing?
That's correct.
We
just have to provide them notice. There's a notice provision in each ordinance what we have to do.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So the public hearing remains open. Do we need a motion to table item number 4? Mr. Jensen?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table ordinance number 1907, amending Chapter 110 of the Code of the Ordinances regarding natural gas franchise with Mid-American Energy Company, including the addition of franchise fees, and this was the initial consideration.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to table action on ordinance number 19-07. Any discussion on tabling? All those in favor of the motion to table ordinance number 19-07, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay, the motion is approved and that ordinance is tabled. At this time, we have another public hearing regarding proposed adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 111 of the Code of Ordinances regarding electric franchise with Interstate Power and Light Company. Public hearing is now open. Brief summary of that one too.
Yes, Your Honor. This one is final, so we are ready to go on this one. It imposes the same 4% franchise fee And one thing I didn't note with the last one is that this does apply to all of the Mid-American, Alliant, Lynn County REC customers. All three of these would apply to all of those customers except for city entities. It is in the statute that they won't charge those to city entities, partially because they would charge us that franchise fee and then they would turn around and give it back to us. So that really is a nonsensical fee to charge to the city. But it would apply to, whereas property tax applies only to the homeowners and it doesn't apply to certain exempt organizations, this will apply to all of those organizations, and it will also apply to any tenants in rental housing and things like that. And again, this is the 4%. For Alliant, they do have a longer term before they would get this in place. So if I remember correctly, I think theirs was closer to 6 months.
Just one clarification I would make, Mayor, is that for any entity out there that is taxable right now that pays local option sales tax on their utility bills, the franchise fee does replace that 1%. So for anybody that is already paying local option sales tax, it actually would show up as a difference of 3%. So they wouldn't pay local option sales tax and then 4% on top of local option sales tax.
Okay. Anyone here to speak in favor of this measure, please come forward. Anyone here to speak in opposition, please come forward. Again, I'll ask if we received anything besides the letter from the Marion Economic Development Corporation. Okay. All right. Seeing that there's no one here to address the council, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Sternad?
Yes, Your Honor. I move to amend ordinance number 19-08, Chapter 111 of the Code of Ordinances regarding electric franchise with Interstate Power and Light Company. This will be Alliant, including the addition of franchise fees. This will be the initial consideration.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 19-08, amending Chapter 111 of the Code of Ordinances regarding electric franchise with Interstate Power and Light Company, and adding the franchise fees. Discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor of ordinance number 19-08, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion's been approved. We have another public hearing at this time regarding proposed adoption of an ordinance regarding franchise agreement with Lynn County Rural Electric Cooperative Association, including the franchise fee. Public hearing is now open.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is the same type of ordinance. In fact, it looks very similar to the Alliant one. There's just a couple of differences in terms depending on what each utility, what their kind of standard agreement was. But essentially, it's the same agreement that we have with Alliant. The biggest difference for this one is that they will be able to begin collecting within 60 days from the passage, which is the shortest amount of time that we have. So if there's no other questions, this is also 4% and same as the others. And this is final.
Okay. And is there anyone here to address the council in favor of this measure? Or in opposition? Come forward, either for or against. Okay, and I'll ask again, have we received any other comments besides the letter from Metco? Okay. Seeing that there's no one coming forward, we will close the public hearing. Mr. Brandt?
Your Honor, I make a motion to approve ordinance number 1909, amending Chapter 114 to the Code of Ordinances regarding a franchise agreement with Lynn County Rural Electric Cooperative Association, Lynn County REC, to include franchise fees. Initial consideration.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 19-09, adding Chapter 114 of the Code of Ordinances regarding a franchise agreement with Lynn County Rural Electric Cooperative Association, including franchise fee. Discussion? Okay, seeing that there's none, we'll vote. All those in favor of ordinance number 19-09, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion is approved.
Your Honor, I move to approve Resolution Number 27558, approving a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with Seven Hills East LLC.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution Number 27558, approving a memorandum of understanding with Seven Hills East LLC. Discussion? Yes, sir.
The
Mr. Brandt.
dates that needed to be filled in, correct?
Yes.
And he said December, but
Yeah, we had added in December of 2019 for the completion of the relocation project, completion of the entire project, which would be the renovations, reconstruction at the new site, could potentially be up to 2 years later, and then the minimum assessment agreement would come into play after that.
Everyone clear on that?
well, so like end of December, like the 31st, December 31st?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have a lot of clarity on that. Mr. Hill's been very gracious about keeping us updated on the progress of his project.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Okay. We'll vote. All those in favor of resolution number 27558, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The motion is approved.
Your Honor, I make a motion to receive and file police officer certified lists.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to receive and file the police officer certified list. Discussion?
It's the biggest number we've had for a long time on a certified list. I'm very pleased. It's been hard to get people that want to come forward and be a police officer, and it's a great list. I hope they're all as good as the list. So.
Okay. Mr. Jensen?
I just got a question. Did the police department do anything different to market the Marion Police Department to bring in more people? Because I agree with Paul, this seems to be a much larger list than I anticipated. So did we do anything differently to bring the people in to have the interest level for our police department?
Typically targeting colleges, whether it's community colleges, universities, nationally advertising through police websites. So went national with it.
Okay. So we did expand our
Yes.
search base compared to what we've done in the past.
Yes.
It looks like it worked. Congrats.
Okay, further comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion to receive and file the police officer certified list, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Okay, the motion is approved. Councilmember Jensen?
Your Honor, I make a motion to approve the following mayoral appointment for Zoning Board of Adjustment: Angela Jordan, 965 Quarry Oak Drive, term expires 12/31/23.
Second?
Okay, so it's been moved by Councilmember Jensen, seconded by Councilmember Atkins, to approve the mayoral appointment to the Zoning Board of Adjustment of Angela Jordan. I will note that this appointment, I spoke with her. She's got a great background, and this appointment then satisfies our gender balance requirements for that board. And so all I have to say about that. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the appointment of Angela Jordan to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion is approved. Mr. Ned?
Your Honor, I make a motion to approve the project calendar regarding the RCB culvert under Central Avenue north of Indian Creek. This will be resolutions to include 27559 through 27561.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the project calendar regarding the RCB culvert under Central Avenue north of Indian Creek. including resolutions 27559 to 27561. Discussion. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion is approved.
Your Honor, I make a motion.
I'm sorry. I need to turn over the gavel at this time. Thank you.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I make a motion to approve resolution number 27562, approving contract with HR Green for engineering design services regarding the 10th Street and the Central Ave, 10th Ave intersection project in the amount not to exceed $58,724.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 27562, approving the contract with HR Green for engineering design services regarding the 10th Street and Central Avenue, 10th Avenue intersection project in an amount not to exceed $58,724. Discussion. Mr. Draper.
My discussion is that after Tuesday's meeting, I kind of agreed in that I think we're not approving the 10th Street and 10th Avenue. And we haven't approved it, but we are in fact approving spending the engineering money. And I just think we need to figure out how to clean that up a little bit. So when we have an item, it's like 29th Avenue. I think if you go back, you'll never find where we voted to approve it. We voted to approve the engineering and the eventual construction. But I think in the future, the council needs to figure out how to word this in such a way that we're not approving the object, we're approving the funding to find out what it's going to cost to do it. And that doesn't explain that real well as it's written, and we need to ask legal how to do that a little better, in my opinion.
I would agree as well. In listening to this conversation on the audio, your discussion going back and forth as to which preceded the other as far as getting to this level is a little daunting and confusing. So do we have any comment from that department that would like to offer any insight as to perhaps it needs to be decided on council whether a project is even interested in moving forward with it before we're putting the cart before the horse here?
I think one of the things that I've been looking back through the prior council actions and the timelines that were related to this, especially when you get the DOT involved and you're talking about things like TEEP grants or ICAP grants, the timelines can get pretty protracted. So just looking back through, for when we first started looking at that intersection, that was all the way back in October of 2017. So as we talk about how we provide you dashboards and touch points on the CIP and progress towards projects, that's one of the things that we want to be able to do is make sure that you've got a clear timeline, clear expectation on what steps are going to be taken and the touch points that you'll have for City Council so that it doesn't feel like there's this huge disconnect between when we first started talking about it and then when action comes back up in front of the City Council again.
And that's what I'm basically saying, Lon. We need to figure out how to clean that up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were other pieces in between, but that was the first time that project was brought up. So, from concept to completion, they can be pretty extended.
Any other discussion? So at this point, the resolution here is to move forward then with the contract with HR Green for the engineering design services regarding it. Okay. Seeing that there's no other questions, we'll move forward with that. All of those in favor of resolution number 27562, say aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed, say no.
No.
One no and one abstention. Ms. Gadelia?
Your Honor, I move resolution number 27563, authorizing the submittal of a 2020 airport state funding application, which includes the development of an instrument approach procedure and the purchase of an automated weather observation system. This is from the Marion Airport Advisory Committee.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the authorizing of Resolution 27563, the submittal of the 2020 airport state funding application, which includes the development of an instrument approach procedure and the purchase of an automated weather observation system. Discussion. Or questions? Yes, Mr. Jensen.
So do we have an estimated cost that may be related to this? This is the first time we've been discussing it. Or is this an effort to find out what the cost impacts are? I understand it's some safety concerns about it, so.
Correct. We applied for these two items last year as a part of the application process, and the dollars identified for the development instrument approach procedure was $125,000, and the AWAS system was $313,900. There may be, these are the numbers from the last year's. We haven't submitted the grant application, but they would be around this. So if there was a slight increase or something, but that's the dollars that we're requesting. Or I guess those are the total amounts, and we were looking at a 70% state funding on those applications, so there'd be a 30% match on those projects.
Okay.
Tom, I'll follow up with some questions here because I've been getting some phone calls and it's been a little bit unclear, or at least for myself anyway, because this is an area that I fall short on having too much knowledge in. But one of the questions comes into play is outside of the runway markers. You know, what truly is and becomes, you know, the expense or the expectations of the city and its related partnership in the airport. So are you saying that we're making this application, but is it on behalf of the city then, or is this on behalf of the co-owner of the airport, or if these funds fall short, where does that liability lie for this particular item here? Because I've been hearing that our navigational beacon is out. It's not working. I know there's been discussion as to whose liability that lies onto. I'm just wondering if you could shed some light on clarity on that for the council. Sorry to put you on the spot there, but it keeps hanging out there. I know we keep applying for things, but where does that come into?
I think these would be on the behalf of the city, and the expectation would be they'd be associated with the city's infrastructure, these two grant applications. With regard to the beacon, you know, I think we've had conversations in-house about that. We need to sit down and really kind of walk through that with Luxair at this point. I don't know that I have a solid answer for you on that, unless Lon or legal has some.
Yeah, the existing beacon was sent out to be evaluated for repair to see if it could be fixed, and it sounds like it's not going to be. So there are some funds. Along with these, there's a little emergency grant program that the city can apply for that could potentially replace that. In general, the line is once the physical infrastructure is in, if there's operating costs associated with it, electric bills, putting new light bulbs in or anything like that, even the type of stuff that it would have taken if the beacon could have been repaired, that'd be the responsibility of the contract operator. If it's going to be physical infrastructure that's going to be installed on our property, then it would be ours. So in the case of a new beacon, if that has to be installed on a pole on the city-owned site, then that piece would be our responsibility.
And I'm sorry.
No.
And who drives that conversation? Is that something we go back to the FAA with, or who sets the parameters on that? Because I understand what you're saying, but I'm just curious to know who makes that final decision as to, clearly we need a new beacon, and so now where does, do we put that on the city property, or?
My understanding is that would be the DOT standard, is that it be installed on our property. Because this isn't a federal airport, we follow the DOT's, the state of Iowa's guidelines for their levels of classifications of airport. I don't claim to be an expert on it myself, but if we're going to be applying for dollars to be able to do it, generally it has to be on our property. So for example, if we want to access that emergency grant that I think you can get up to $10,000 on, it would have to be installed on our property.
And do we know what the potential outlay of cost would be for purchase and installation of such item, and what the maintenance would be going forward with such an item?
Not yet.
Okay. So these could be possibly some additional expenditures on the city's behalf of an item that we may not have had knowledge of in the past. So any other questions or discussion on this particular item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of resolution number 27563 say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. We have one abstention of the mayor. Thank you. Ms. Atkins?
Your Honor, I make a motion directing staff to enter into a sales agreement for city-owned property located adjacent to 2791 7th Avenue in the amount of $1,140, GLD Properties, LLC.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to direct staff to enter into a sales agreement for the city-owned property located adjacent to 2791 7th Avenue in the amount of $1,140. This will be for the GLD Properties, LLC.
Your Honor.
Discussion. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to give an update to the council. As you know, the developers were here on Tuesday, and there was some dialogue back and forth regarding that established value. I had asked, in lieu of having a number outside of what was originally proposed, that was placed on the agenda. I spoke to the developer earlier today. They've indicated that they would like to change that number to $2,000 and then also include the survey and abstracting fees associated with that property. I think those other two items, the survey and the abstracting fees, would probably be around $1,000 to $1,500. So they wanted to change that from their original request. One of the bases for that is on the parking, and I think there was some concern about how many parking in that space. Parking stalls are about 10 by 20, so that $2,000 is about $1 per square foot for the parking stalls that they had identified. So I know we got a little short between Tuesday and Thursday, so there was nothing in writing, but we did have some phone calls back and forth today regarding that, and they asked me to present that to the council.
So just as clarification, then, we're being updated then to a $2,000 offer, and also to pay for the survey and abstract services that would be necessary, in anticipation of somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 worth of value to those two line items. Discussion.
Do we need to amend that?
Just it'd probably be good to amend it.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to amend, directing staff to enter into a sales agreement for the city-owned land or property located adjacent to 2791 7th Avenue in the amount of $2,000 plus survey and abstracting fees.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to amend the motion to direct staff to enter into a sales agreement for the city-owned property located at 2791 7th Avenue with GLD for a purchase offer of $2,000 plus survey plus abstract in the amount of approximately $1,000 to $1,500. Any discussion on the amendment? We have nothing in writing here other than verbal. And again, this would only be moving in the direction, but that would be under the assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but if we do not have a council in agreement of these terms, again, I want to make sure that we're clear, we're not wasting staff's time here. So is this forgive me here, I feel as if though we're in a situation where this is a all or none or a non-bargaining issue here.
Well, I'm bringing forward what the last conversation I had with the developer was. This is a motion directing the staff to enter into the sales agreement, so we would just prepare it. There would be the approval of that purchase or sales agreement would have to come back to council as well. So this is just saying, go get this done. So there would be, we'd bring it back for
full authorization on it as well, so.
Okay, so the way it stands right now, we have a motion to amend it, so I guess we could proceed with the amendment portion of this, and then we can finish with the discussion as to whether or not this item will move forward with that discussion with directing staff. Are we all in agreement on that?
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
I just wanted to add that, as Tom was just stating, this is just the motion to start negotiating that contract. Not only would we bring the final contract back for approval, but there has to be a public hearing on disposition of property, and that has to be properly noticed. So you will see this again, and there will be time for further discussion. And at that time, we could discuss any modification of terms that council wanted to put forward at that time too.
Okay. Duly noted. Thank you. So at this time, we'll go ahead and take a vote on the motion to amend this item. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries on the amendment with abstention of the mayor. Now we'll move back to the motion directing staff to enter into the sales agreement with these new terms. Any further discussion on this? Mr. Gadelia.
Yes, I think I've raised some large concerns on Tuesday. And first of all, I want to apologize for misspeaking. I do it all the time. I say things that pop into my head, and I'm fortunate to have translators up here for me because you guys often jump in and clarify, so thank you. I think that I said something about when the city can generate revenue, and that's not what I'm trying to do with this. I'm trying to make sure the city gets its fair share, however. I feel that we're already going on this 2016 appraisal, and I'm not trying to get it reappraised because I realize that the cost of that would probably exceed what we would be getting from this. But I do think that the additional less than 600 square feet that they're recognizing, I appreciate the effort, and I'm glad the survey and abstract is in here, and I do plan to discuss this further when we get the opportunity. I had reached out to the city manager, to Lon, and asked him to quantify, and I don't know if you've had time to do that, what you thought of the 7,500 square feet, what you thought was truly usable of that, and that's because this is not certainly my line of work or where I spend most of my time every day, so I wanted to get your professional opinion, if you could shed some light on that.
Yeah, when I went back and looked at it, there's a couple of things. The southern side of the property is encumbered by a 30-foot trail easement, and so even though they will have access to the property as any member of the public would, they have very limited uses for what they could do with that property. The same thing, there's a public access easement going through the center of the drive lane that's 20 feet wide, and so again, they're very limited in the utility that they could have with that. So what I did was go back and look at what's the remaining square footage and focused on what they actually had that was usable to their exclusive use, and that's where I started looking at the parking spaces. There's about the equivalent of 9 parking spaces on there, and as Tom said, a typical parking space is about 200 square feet. So the direct benefit to them for the property is in that 1,800 to 2,000 square foot range. From there, then it's a determination of what do you as council feel like the value of that property is. As you've stated, the last value that we had on it was from 2016, appraising out at about $1.10 a square foot. One of the concerns I had was making sure that we're not getting paid for the property and then turning around and having to spend $1,000 on a plat of survey to be able to transfer it. So I don't think that the amount that they came back to us with is entirely unfair. It is more reflective of the value to the property. I'd prefer to be more in about the $3,000 range for the property itself, and then have the additional assurance that they're going to pay for the expenses of transfer. And I wouldn't restrict it to just the plat of survey or the abstracting. If we have to generate an abstract from whole cloth, that's fairly expensive. You have to update the abstract, bring it up to bring it current. You have to prepare a deed. There's a cost of publication. When you start layering all those together, it could easily exceed that $1,000 or $1,500. I would just want them to pay all the costs of transfer.
And is that out there yet, or is that something we would negotiate when it comes back for the approval? at that
I think we have the ability to present a counteroffer. They gave Tom one today that we brought to council, but we would have the ability to present that counter.
Okay. Thank you for that, and knowing that it's still kind of open even after that vote. Just for the record, I will be very interested in further negotiation, but I feel better that they're at least acknowledging some of this, and in the downtime, I'd like to have a better understanding, and perhaps I'll just come in to do that, because I feel like the entrance that they're going to gain from that remnant is pretty valuable, maybe not from a square footage standpoint, but from what it does for their property. They need to have that. So I think that, anyway, I would like to understand it a little further, and I don't want to hold this up, and I'm glad that they're making an effort, but I'll be digging a little further. So.
One thing I would point out is that with projects like this, I mean, they're virtually every project along the Central Corridor, because it's a redevelopment project and you're dealing with brownfield conditions and in many cases demolition, they all have a financial gap associated with them. If you think back, like on Lebeda, the city extended an incentive there of about $300,000. There's a little bit of flexibility in what they can do, but what tends to happen, I mean, if we were to go in and say we want $100,000 for this parcel, they'll simply come back and ask us to revise the ask for the financial gap on the project. So they have a little bit of room in there to be able to wiggle, but it's one of those cases where, from my perspective, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, because if the facility based on market rates for lease and the square footage that they have can only support so much financing, and so if we push hard enough that we start to increase that gap, they're just going to come back and ask us for a larger TIF incentive.
That's fair. Thank you.
Lon, I hate to ask you, but what did we pay for the parking lot when the city acquired ours for the flat parking up there? Do you recall what that was per square foot?
Not 100%. I'd have to look. It had a building on it.
True. Yeah, I know that one's kind of washed. But again, too, listening to the audio on this one, I was impressed with the marketing on this one, and the discussion was centered around $1.10 per square foot only on the usable portion of the land, which I found it to be an interesting approach to this, as we would update the abstract and title. Obviously, it's going to be for all 70, correct me if I'm wrong, all 7,500 square feet or 8,500 square feet, whatever that ends up being, correct, Tom?
Yeah, that'll be the sale.
So that would be the sale. So, if we were to work those backwards again and use the true numbers, it would be substantially in the cents per foot. I as well will not probably support that one going forward as it currently reads. That's why I hesitate as to whether to for myself, move forward on this one here. I'd like to get the numbers where they need to be before everybody goes through the process. But that's my concern. I remember when we transacted that property before the proposal of the hotel, and I thought we were very gracious on that land as well too, because the value on it was extremely low until it titled over, and then all of a sudden it had a pop-up market value substantially higher. So again, someone with a little bit of the history on that, those are the things I can concern about. But again too, we're getting down here to minuscule dollars as well too. But by the same token, Ms. Gadelia, I feel you have a very valid point here. In my investment background, you buy low, sell high, and it's difficult for me to see when we do have a lot of asks on our city council, and doesn't seem like a lot, but to the taxpayer, it's a lot of money. So it is our right and our obligation to make sure that we're just transacting at a fair value. I'm not saying that anybody should profit, but even at what my numbers would be, it would not be a profit by any means. So any other discussion on this before we take a vote for the motion directing staff to enter into a sales agreement? Yes, sir, Mr.
I just want to clarify, this is just motioning directing staff to enter into a sales agreement. It's not a finalize.
Correct.
Okay. What you were saying there made me think that this was final. Yeah, this is just, we need to approve this so that you can at least make
I guess, acting on a whim here, just thinking through it, I mean, if the council is
Have to amend this.
majority that supports what's being proposed, and that passes, the amended motion passes, I would proceed to prepare it in that manner, and then that question would come. If it fails, I would like the direction to proceed with negotiations, so that I don't know, Lon, do we even need anything on there? We just come back with a different, okay, so we just let it roll. All right.
So if it passes with this amount, you can still negotiate. Yeah.
Yeah, this is, the motion as amended is the second offer from the development company for what they're making an offer to the city. If you vote it down, that's a pretty clear indication to them that the council does not find that offer acceptable, and at that point, it's incumbent upon them to come back to us and either negotiate or give us another offer.
But
Put it on them.
just for clarification, I thought that even if we put this forward, we're still entering into a negotiation where the end dollar amount could change as well? No?
The final, so we would go back, negotiate a sales agreement, and that would have to be approved by the council.
So just approved, but no further negotiation, we would basically be...
I mean, it could be. I would, sitting in my seat, I'd rather go back with this is the number, and then put it together and have basically the form of the agreement being brought forward. But that doesn't mean that has to happen that way. We can come to that conclusion, and then at the meeting, there could be a further discussion on that. I mean, because it's not approved till it's approved.
Right, okay. So, just in fairness, I think I've made my point. Again, I'm not an expert. I don't do land valuations. I do education, virtual reality. So very, very different worlds. I don't want to, I think this is a great project, and I certainly don't want to damage a relationship because I'm poking around maybe where it's, again, not my area of expertise, which is why I leaned on you and I called Lon. I think that this is a better effort than what came forward. I don't know that I feel awesome about it, but I don't have enough of a knowledge about this kind of stuff. I'm not comfortable being on a voting down side of this because I could be wrong. And so that's not worth it to me. What it will do is learn more about it, and if I have more concerns, then when it comes back for approval, then I'll raise them at that time.
Mr. Jensen.
Yeah, I made comments on Tuesday that certainly I felt they were getting more benefit than just 1,000 square feet they were talking about. So at least I'm glad they did up the number a little bit. It may not be maybe quite as far as I would have wanted, but if they're paying $2,000 plus all transfer cost, I think that would put me in the ballpark that I'd be satisfied with it enough, knowing that, again, this is an important project. It'll add a lot of value to the city, and also with the understanding that with a project like this in the brownfield area, they are apt to incur some other costs that they cannot foresee at this time. And so, again, I think for a project of this scope, they're the only buyer for this piece of property anyway. There's nobody else out there, so.
Paul, bring it.
Mr. Brandt.
I'll echo what Steve just said. And, when we get that first payment from their property taxes, it's going to be way more than maybe $1,000. So we're going to see a benefit from them building this project also, a huge benefit compared to what was there. I think at 2,000 survey and abstracting paid by them is a good deal on this property for what they're going to be doing.
You can tell my heart's really into this.
Yeah, right.
Took a little siesta.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for a little remnant spot, I think I'm fine with this.
Okay. Ms. Adkins?
I would also concur. I think this feels right at this point, and not knowing exactly, but knowing that they've made some movement in the right direction, and this this is important for us to continue to move this project forward. So I would agree with Will and Steve here.
Has this project, as far as the rest of the project on this, there's TIFs and everything applied to this project already? I'm assuming
There's a memorandum of agreement on it. We will have to bring the actual development agreement to the city council for approval because they're acquiring territory that was not covered underneath the original agreement. So when it's replatted and we have the new legal description, we'll bring back that agreement to correct it.
Thank you.
You know, Lon, it might be worth just mentioning, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but this, if you recall that the property just north of this, and it goes back to when we originally started contemplating the sale of all that property. I should have brought a map, but GLD actually owns the property directly, I'm sorry, Genesis owns that property directly north. And so the property east of this, where the right-of-way ends, was owned by GLD, the developer on this piece. So they've entered into a purchase agreement to buy that remnant piece to the west. And when we sold all the ground that we sold to GLD, they bought everything that was adjacent to them on the south. So that's another reason why that remnant piece is kind of laying there. So there's a multitude of land transactions that are going on with this property. So there's quite a bit of confusion. It's a very confusing real estate deal, so there's a lot of moving pieces with it. So I don't know if that helps explain any of the why behind some of this, but I can show it on a plat maybe at a future date just for clarification, but anyway.
Thank you. I think it's, yeah, we're all excited about this project, and it's tied to a lot of things, and I'm going to stand my ground, and every transaction, piece by piece, has got to be well thought of and laid out, and their projects aren't going to go away for the $1,000 difference here, but nonetheless, let's move on. Any other discussion for this before we take a vote on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amended motion directing staff to enter into a sales agreement for city-owned property located adjacent to 2791 7th Avenue in the amount of $2,000 plus survey plus abstracts in the approximation of $1,000 to $1,500, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. No. Motion carries. 1 no and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Make a motion for resolution number 27564, setting a public hearing for April 18th, 2019, regarding the disposition of city-owned property located adjacent to 2791 7th Avenue, and this is for GLD Properties, LLC.
Second.
I'm sorry. I was busy taking notes, but this one we're going to have to pull off. We can either not vote on it or table it. We need a legal description on that parcel, and we don't have the plat of survey approved.
Do? Okay.
So I got a little cart ahead of the horse there.
What would be the preferred method on this? Retract the motion or to table it?
It really is kind of up to you guys on that one, what you prefer. I believe it's pretty anticipated that we'll have that legal description in the next few days, so this will be on the agenda again next week in 2 weeks would be my guess. Is that the correct understanding, Tom? Yeah. So if you tabled it, it would be back next week, so our next meeting.
Okay. So do we need a motion to table it?
Make a motion to table resolution number 27564, setting a public hearing for April 18th, 2019, regarding the disposition of city-owned property located adjacent to 2791 7th Avenue, GLD Properties, LLC.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to table resolution number 27564. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries with 1 abstention. Thank you. I relinquish the meeting back over to the mayor.
Thank you. At this time, we have a public hearing regarding neighborhood at Indian Creek Master Plan for the property between 35th Avenue and Tower Terrace Road extended and 35th Street and 44th Street extended. Public hearing is now open. We have a presentation?
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so as the council knows, and as I presented a briefing on Tuesday at the work session, just the overview of the neighborhood and Indian Creek plan, I had indicated that we'd have representatives from RDG Planning and Design, who we had the contract with to develop that plan, in attendance this evening. Charlie Cowell is with RDG, and he's going to do a little synopsis of the plan document. Hopefully you had I know it was just a small 60-page document to look over and review. 20 pages of ordinance language.
Welcome, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. As Tom mentioned, I'm Charlie Cowell with RDG Planning and Design, 301 Grand Avenue, Des Moines, Iowa. We've been working with the city over the past year on this update to this plan, and I just want to take a few minutes here to go over some of the highlights of what the plan has in it. So here's the overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. Our process of how we got here, the plan document itself and the sections that are included in it, and then some of the items that are in the architectural standards and district standards, and then time for questions as well. So as you might recall, there is an adopted plan out there right now for the neighborhood at Indian Creek. It was adopted in 2009. So one of the main goals of this update was to update some of the land use plan based on just changing conditions, a new school site that will be located within the plan boundaries, and then apply design standards to the previous plan or the new plan as well, so that the zoning can be in place to enact some of the recommendations. So here's a little context of the area. It's bounded by 35th Street, 44th Street, 35th Avenue, and Tower Terrace Road. There is a larger overall study area that we looked at as well, just to understand that this neighborhood is not going to be in isolation, understanding the context and how it relates to potential future development in those areas as well. We held a series of stakeholder meetings with property owners and others in September. We had a public open house in November that was well attended, that gave an update to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then worked through the winter months kind of formulating the plan once we were able to see the updated school site plan, and made up some minor updates to make sure that we're meshing with their plans for that area. So this was the 2009 rendering of what the plan had envisioned. The 2018 draft is not terribly different from the standpoint, except there is a giant square where the school will now is located here, and I'm going to get my highlighter so I can be doing this a little more. There we go. So when we looked at the school plan, we were able to put that in there and make some adjustments. You'll notice the kind of salmon color areas. Those are designated as commercial mixed-use land uses. The brownish are multi-unit residential, so higher density residential. And then the yellow is a series of, we'll call it low-density residential or urban residential, a series of townhomes, smaller lot single-family residential, and a series of greenways that lead throughout the neighborhood plan that, and I'll talk about a little more, that lead into the school site and elsewhere. The larger community park option remains as it was in 2009. It's about a 15-acre community park designation, and then a neighborhood square as well. So the plan document itself is separated into 12 chapters or sections, talking about the elements that are desired for this neighborhood. I'll just jump right into it here. I talked a little bit about the residential and mixed use, and that's one thing about this plan and when it was adopted in 2009, and really in this update, is this neighborhood's envisioned as being something not like anything else in Marion, from the standpoint of the mixed use, the walkability, greenway system, and being able to go from one end to the other without necessarily being on a street if you're a pedestrian or a bicyclist. And then we've identified in this update some district standards and district zones that pretty much match the areas I just identified as commercial mixed use, apartment-style, high-density residential, and low-density residential as well. There's a lot of discussion and items in here related to green space, greenway system, and making those connections, those walkability connections to the school site, and also surrounding plans that are already in place by the city through their bicycle and pedestrian plans. We discussed how stormwater management can be incorporated into the neighborhood, and not just in the greenway system, but in parking lots, through permeable pavement, stormwater retention and detention areas, how those can be features of the neighborhood that are aesthetically pleasing and not fenced off detention ponds and things like that. The idea of this being really a multimodal circulation pattern in this neighborhood, the idea of was known as filtered permeability. So basically the ability to walk from your house to certain destinations in the area without actually interacting with vehicles at all. So that's what the system of greenways is meant to do. And it could look, this is an example of what that could look like, whether your front door actually goes out onto a greenway, and for your vehicles would be in the rear, access through an alley, a rear-loaded garage, and such like this. This example is from Stapleton, Colorado. And we understand that parking's still a need, and it's not going to necessarily go away, but how we locate that parking, we have reduced some of the parking requirements for this particular neighborhood for the mixed uses, but placing the parking on the rear, buildings to the street, and managing how that parking looks from a landscaping perspective as well. I've talked about a lot of these sort of pedestrian elements, but they're really the feature items of the neighborhood, from the greenway systems, the trails, the paving, the plaza spaces, public spaces, and how they connect to the school and the community park that's envisioned for this area. And landscaping throughout is really important from a walkability standpoint, but also from just an aesthetic and a feel of what this neighborhood could be like, especially in the more commercial mixed-use areas that maybe have higher intensity uses, more activity on the street, and those sorts of things. And then a discussion of how signage can really introduce people to the neighborhood, and basically highlighting those 4 entry points, main entry points, and how wayfinding or gateway signage can really tell people when they get that they're arriving at somewhere that's really different and unique in Marion. Making sure that we're providing lighting in appropriate scales and appropriate locations, whether that's commercial versus residential, how those should look from a standpoint of not reflecting maybe adversely on residential properties, but still allowing, with the walkability concept, to have that happen in the evenings, or maybe when it's a little darker out, and not feel unsafe or detract people from doing that. And we provide, one thing about the plan, if you had a chance to look through it, as examples for all these ideas that we're putting in into the architectural character as well, and into the design standards. We talk a lot of detail about the building orientation. It's really important for creating that atmosphere of walkability, the scale, the materials, the texture, and we have standards in here for allowed material lists, allowed percentages for what you can use certain materials for. And that's not just for aesthetic purposes, but also quality. Some of these materials, actually, with our architects in our firm, identified materials that are going to last longer. They may cost a little bit more up front, but they're going to last longer than maybe other materials that are commonly used on housing and commercial developments. And a lot of these images are pretty, well, they're the same as the 2009 plan, and we've added some additional ones as well to kind of further the concept. And I just talked about, primary, secondary materials that would be allowed on storefronts and building fronts. And then implementation, I guess one thing I didn't mention in when I was looking at that overview plan with the land uses is we provide a depiction of buildings and where they're located now. The buildings, it's not saying the building necessarily would be built in that exact footprint, but the idea is a concept of how maybe some buildings should be arranged facing the street, and maybe those are not the exact actual size that they're represented, but the implementation process would be very similar to the site plan process today, where someone would come in and submit their plan for a certain property or area, and it would be evaluated according to those criteria and how those buildings fit into that site. And then the appendix items provide a series of background information of some of our work and supplemental material to understand kind of site layouts and things along that nature. We provide an extended land use plan that goes out beyond the neighborhood so that we can understand, or people can understand that, for example, the community park is not just going to be serving this neighborhood, but there's going to be it's big enough to support surrounding residential uses as well. So we've pushed that out a little bit just to understand the context of traffic patterns and future development that may focus around these nodes, especially with Highway 13 and Prospect Meadows being developed soon. And then the latter half of Appendix 2 provides district standards sheets for each of these zoning districts we've identified within the plan development: neighborhood, mixed use, multi-use residential, and urban residential. And just a high-level overview of what those are. The neighborhood mixed use is like I mentioned, focusing on those commercial services, retail and residential uses on the upper floors. Encourage both horizontal and vertical mixed use, so meaning one building could be commercial and the next could be a different type of commercial, but also with residential on the upper floors for this district. And that would be that salmon color, again, identified kind of in this area. The multi-unit residential is kind of that transition point from the maybe more commercial mixed use into the single-family residential, so these brownish areas. This would allow some commercial on ground floors, but it would be focused primarily at major intersections, so would be allowed, I should say, at intersections, and then the rest would be kind of your higher density apartment style residential condominiums and those types of uses. And then the urban residential would allow a mix of residential from townhomes to single family, duplexes, townhomes, and kind of that transition point between the school and the more higher density uses. And then I mentioned it provides more details on which materials are allowed, which materials are not allowed. And this is set up to transfer to other areas if it needed to in Marion, if that was the desire of the city, to use these models elsewhere. And then we have some standards to prevent kind of cookie cutter development where all the houses are exactly the same, placed the same, painted the same. So we have some little tweaks in there that discourage that and ensure that is kind of provides some different variety throughout the housing types. So I know that was pretty fast, but I welcome to help answer any questions you may have about it, a process and how we got here and any of the details.
Okay, so we're in the public hearing phase right now, so I think we'll have the public hearing, and then when we get to the resolution, we'll allow time for questions. Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. So is there anyone here to speak in favor of this measure? Okay, anyone here to speak in opposition? Please come forward. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to the resolution. Mr. Ned.
Yes, Your Honor. I move to adopt resolution number 27565, the neighborhood at Indian Creek Master Plan for property between 35th Avenue and Tower Terrace Road, extended and 35th Street and 44th Street extended, City of Marion.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 27565, adopting neighborhood at Indian Creek master plan for the property between 35th Avenue and Tower Terrace Road extended and 35th Street and 44th Street extended. Okay, discussion, and would you mind coming back up, and then we can have people ask you questions as we discuss it here now for the resolution. And thank you for your patience through this very long meeting, waiting for us to get to this point, but we appreciate it.
The only thing I had is
Great.
I had a little time yesterday and I was watching them work. You're not going to have to worry about 6 inches of black topsoil. That is the deepest, blackest soil I think I've ever seen. It's a really good looking area when they dig that up just a little bit. It's amazing.
Okay, Ms. Goodale?
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask, but my question was basically, you have a variety of housing stock throughout, obviously. How large is the continuum of that from a price point standpoint? Do you have any sense of that, or is it too early in the project to kind of talk about the levels of pricing on the variety of houses in here?
That would be a little hard for me to answer. I can say that the way that at least this depiction, land use plan depiction is showing it is a variety. There are some larger lot options, a few locations, especially on the corners, but they're going to be a little bit smaller lots, so that helps with some of the costs. And then, of course, the townhome and apartment style. But yeah, it's hard for me to put a price on maybe what a developer would be thinking on some of these lots.
Okay.
But the idea is smaller lot, maybe smaller footprint, based on the demographics that we're seeing Midwest and nationwide now, and kind of changing preferences as far as maybe I don't want a big yard because I have a park right by me, so I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of square footage because I have those amenities nearby.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so those are trends you're seeing?
Yes. In fact,
I mean, it's good for us to know that.
Yep, we have in Des Moines right now, they're breaking ground, or they have broken ground of a development of a similar intent as this, actually with the greenway system and smaller lot, townhome mixed development, and it's moving forward just as fast as any development projects we've had.
So there's interest and people are buying?
Yep.
Okay, good. Other questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Jensen.
Well, that was a concern a couple of us had on Tuesday, is that especially the single-family detached lots around the schools, that, again, typically younger families move in near schools that have kids that want larger garages, and not just a 2-stall, but a 3-stall. So I still have some concern whether that is, it might be a trend in some areas, but when you get near a school, I just see that demand as being differently. My other question related to that is you showed some pictures of back alley or backloaded alley with the garages in the back of the alleys. Is some of that in that single family area, or are those some in more of the gold color legends?
Yeah, it is. I'll just kind of highlight here. So these kind of streets here would be considered alleys.
Okay.
And so, yeah, there would be alley loaded here. Granted, these are on streets, but some of these are would just be on greenways.
Okay, so we have some of each throughout that entire development.
Right.
Okay, so your comment, so you don't feel that when you get near a school that those younger families are going to want a 3-stall garage?
Yeah, we're finding that, they could have a 2-stall facing the street, and then you could have accessory structures or rear facing a 3rd stall if that was an option. But I understand the point, yeah. And we don't, especially in this area, we wanted to make this area just different than anywhere else in Marion. So by doing that and having the front of the residential areas be porches and be yards and try to limit driveway space and that sort of thing, trying to create that more traditional neighborhood feel in this area.
Yeah, I'm still not completely buying into that concept, but I understand what you're doing. The other question I have, you made a comment about there's something in the design standards and all of this to eliminate the monotony of the look. And again, I'm interested in how that's done because I've seen new neighborhoods pop up where you would not be guilty of going into the wrong house.
Right.
If you come home late at night because they all look the same.
Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, how do we control that? So maybe that's, I don't know if that's your question or
Yeah, I can.
staff's question, but
yeah,
how does that controlled and really managed? Because
Yeah,
I've
so
never
what-
heard that before.
Yeah, the approach we took was saying if there was a block face, for example, with more than 3 houses or less than 10, or more than 3 houses up to 10, then they'd required to do so many, or 2 in this instance, architectural changes. So that could be color, it could be primary material usage,
Okay.
it could be the actual style of the house, whether it's arts and crafts versus a ranch style. Those would all count as considered an architectural change. And so there could still be multiple houses that are the same, but the idea is on a single block, all of them wouldn't be
It's
the
limited
same.
as to how
Yeah.
many can be of the same style on a block.
On a block, yep.
Never heard of that
Yeah,
before.
so
All right.
there may be 4 or 5 or 6 models throughout the whole neighborhood if this is master planned as one, but on any single block there would be some variety.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Brandt.
To go back to the 3-stall garage conversation, Steve, I actually brought that up with some other agents in my office
Yeah.
to get some opinions from other realtors about that. And they all actually liked the idea of the smaller lots
Do they?
around the
Okay.
school with the lower price points. And frankly, it's just because we kind of all just talked about how just the housing stock, the pricing has gone up so much.
It
So,
has.
and I brought up the point, the families around the schools, and they all said, well, I think people prefer to see the lower price point over having that 3rd stall. So,
All right.
even though it's by the school.
Okay, good feedback.
I mean, it was just a sample of a few agents, but yeah.
One thing I
love-
think
Oh,
for
go
the
ahead.
council to maybe keep in mind on that is if you think about the schools in Marion that were most recently developed, so Echo Hill Elementary, Lynn Grove Elementary, Novak Elementary, if you go out and go around Lynn Grove, the majority of those houses are smaller lot with 2-stall garages. The same thing that you see out there on the area north of Echo Hill Road on the same side as the school is. You see a little bit more of a mix over around Novak Elementary where you have some of the older ones that were smaller and then some of the new ones that were bigger. But I think if you look at what has been built around the more recent ones, you'd even see that more predominantly in Marion than the 3 stalls.
Yeah, I love the plan. I was on the original committee in 2009 for the sub-area plan. Been disappointed that we caved a little bit on the original plan and allowed some, and I'm hoping that this is not going to happen again, that this plan is going to remain this plan, and we're not going to let developers or other people change it, whether it's economy or whatever it is. The plan is the plan, and I think that we should stick to it. We're trying to create something that's different, that doesn't exist in the entire metro area, I think. And it's a unique development that gives people different options. I love the alley-loaded garages, and that the thought of bringing back. When you look at most of our new neighborhoods in Marion, the garage is open. People drive in, and all their windows face the back, and nobody has windows facing the front yard because it's half garages, and people aren't outside talking to their neighbors. I mean, to bring back that kind of an option where people can have a front porch or, and garages at the back that they can at least have a window from their living room facing the street. Look at all the new houses being built. There's no window in the living room facing the street. It's all the great room or the family room is in the back facing the backyard. So I think it's a great concept. And, not everybody has to live there. This is just one small piece of the city that gives people that option. And if they don't like that, there's lots of other options. We're growing in all directions, and there's lots of other options that they can go find, a different house with a 3-car garage and whatever it is. But I think it's a great plan. I'm just urging us to stick to the plan if we do adopt it and not vary from it, because it's already shrunk from what it was initially in 2009. So, yes, sir.
I apologize if I've missed this somewhere, but the common areas as far as the sidewalks and are those HOAs or are those public right-of-ways?
That would be, it would depend, and I think it would be to determine, but I think the idea is that these would be public-owned streets for the most part, yeah. The alleys as well.
So the connecting sidewalks, though, that connect all of the houses from the front, I'm thinking snow removal, areas that would be larger that would require mowing, those would be public?
Yes, yeah. These larger green spaces here would be parks, could be public. It kind of just depends on how the development site plans come
so
forward.
that part of it's undetermined. I'm just curious
Yeah.
if there was HOA fees associated with it. So, okay, thank you.
Just from what I've gathered in conversations and what I've seen across the communities, things develop, the larger areas are going to probably be dedicated, but I'd say the medium-sized areas around the townhomes in this, I would definitely see these no different than the condos where they're part of the green space, especially the greenways would definitely be an HOA. And as a matter of fact, in the document, we're requiring that if we have that, and we're gonna need to see that. That's something we've never asked for. If you go to Ankeny, and I'm assuming almost any Des Moines suburb and Des Moines, there's open space within these subdivisions, and as a part of their development plan and their review, the HOA is provided to the city. Not that we would enforce any of the covenants or any of the terms, but we need to ensure that if there's any public access easements, which all these alleys would have a public access, that they're free and clear and that there's appropriate indications on there that they're going to remain free and clear, because that's critical to the project. So these development agreements for projects like this are going to be more complicated. There's a higher level of design. When you get more density, it's going to create that level of detail that we're going to need. So you'll see some of that as we bring those projects forward. I would point out that it's interesting. I don't think anybody in the audience is here to speak to this issue. We've been working on this for a long time. We've noticed this on several occasions, and this is a highly, I guess, a much different zoning designation than we've ever had, and there's not one person here to speak about it, so I'm a little concerned about it, I'll be honest with you. But I think there also is that we've done a lot of public outreach, and there's a lot of support for the plan from a representation. So I hope that's true. I've met with one developer in particular that's looking at a piece of this and came in and wanted to see all the details and the setbacks and everything. So we've already got one person that's kind of trying to figure out how to make this work with what they do. There's a lot of the setbacks are reduced. We didn't really talk into the details, but a lot of the setbacks are less. That provides more buildable area on a smaller lot, so that price per square foot, you get to use it all. So it drives some of that. So anyway, I'm not going to, you guys have the plan and had a chance to read through it. This is exciting, though. I will tell you that from a staff perspective, and I'm assuming Charlie could probably speak, that there aren't a lot of districts like this outside of the Des Moines metro area. Ankeny's got some neat areas, so this is pretty.
Yeah, it's an example of the city being planful and getting out. I mean, we started in 2009 to get out way ahead of the development potential of this land, so that everybody knew it was coming, so that people could plan for it, and we're here now where it needs to be, where it could start developing, and it's really exciting. It's the first time the city has done something like that, where we've taken an entire area and master planned it. It's not unique in other parts of the country, but it's exciting to see us being that forward-looking and planful. So Other questions on this? Thanks for coming all the way from Des Moines and sitting through our meeting. Are you driving back this evening?
Yep,
still?
yep,
Okay.
I'm heading back. Brings me back to my days in city government, so.
Well, thank you. Thanks for all your work on this, too. Okay, any other questions or comments or thoughts before we vote?
Your Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I only have one. And as a resident at Hunter's, my only concern is that we never, ever, ever close Lucor and 35th on that commercial corner you have there. It's so hard to get in and out of Hunter's Ridge now. If, we can certainly, when we start building there, keep that roadway open. And that would be, I think it's a great plan, and would be my only thing would be that we make some kind of a promise that we never ever, when 35th becomes Lucor Road, that it stays open so people can get home.
Tom will promise you that.
I don't think engineering will allow that to be closed even during construction. But I
hope you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
It isn't engineering you worry about. It's my 3855 that's...
Okay, then we'll vote. All those in favor of resolution number 27565, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Motion is approved. This time we have another public hearing regarding amending the future land use map of the Marion Comprehensive Plan located between 35th Avenue, Indian Creek Road, and Indian Creek Way, and 35th Street, Lucor Road, and Highway 13. Public hearing is now open. Who's presenting this one?
So, Your Honor, the land use plan was presented as a part of the presentation I presented on Tuesday. If you want more, I can provide it. But
if you can just tell us what we're doing for the benefit of the audience and people listening from home, what it is we're voting on. Yeah.
So, as the council's aware that the land use plan as a part of the comprehensive plan is the basis for zoning. We're amending the land use plan in the area north of 35th and east of 35th Street over to Highway 13. So we've made some modifications to that planning document, and it was in your packet. So it does provide for additional commercial on the west side of 13, and then identifies an office and kind of business park on the northeast quadrant of that land.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this measure? Please come forward. Anyone here to speak in opposition? Please come forward. We received any comments outside of this meeting from the public on this? None? No. Okay. All right, seeing that no one is coming forward, we will close the public hearing and move on to item number 7.
Yes, Your Honor, I make a motion to approve Resolution 27566, amending the future land use map of the Marion Comprehensive Plan located between 35th Avenue and Indian Creek Road, Indian Creek Way, and 35th Street, Lucor Road, and Highway 13, City of Marion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 27566, amending the future land use map of the Marion Comprehensive Plan for the area located between 35th Avenue, Indian Creek Road, Indian Creek Way, and 35th Street, Lucor Road, and Highway 13. Discussion on this? All those in favor of resolution number 27566, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. The motion is approved. We have another public hearing regarding zoning from undesignated and C1 neighborhood commercial to PDS, Planned Development Special, for the property between 35th Avenue, Tower Terrace Road extended, and 35th Street, 44th Street extended. The public hearing is now open. Mr. Trahern, another description?
So essentially, this public hearing is related to the actual zoning of the property. So we adopted the plan document, amended the land use, and so this action would be the zoning the property west of 44th Extended, south of Tower Terrace Road, and north of 35th Avenue to that PDS zoning district classification. So,
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak either in favor or in opposition of this measure? Please come forward at this time. Okay. And have we received other comments outside this meeting? Mr. Trahan? Okay. Okay, we will close the public hearing and move on to number 9.
Your Honor, I move ordinance number 19-10, approving zoning from undesignated in C1 neighborhood commercial to PDS Plan Development Special for property between 35th Avenue and Tower Terrace Road Extended and 35th Street and 44th Street Extended. This is the initial consideration, City of Marion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 19-10, approving zoning from undesignated in C1 neighborhood commercial to PDS Plan Development Special for property between 35th Avenue Tower Terrace Road Extended and 35th Street and 44th Street Extended. Initial consideration. Discussion? Okay. All those in favor of ordinance number 19-10, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion is approved. We have another public hearing. What's this number? 10, 20? I don't know. Another public hearing this evening regarding zoning from undesignated to PI, public institutional, located north of 35th Avenue, east of 35th Street. This is related to the construction of the school. The public hearing is now open, and I see we have a presentation.
I wasn't going to go into anything detailed. I just wanted to identify that the area, the large area here, 40 acres to school sites located in this vicinity. I haven't shown anything in a while. I felt like you needed to see it.
So this is to rezone the property so that the school can be built there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyone here to address the council either in favor or in opposition of this measure? Please come forward at this time. Okay. Any public comment outside this meeting? None? Okay. We'll note that. And seeing that no one is coming forward, we will close the public hearing. Move on to number 11.
Your Honor, I move to approve ordinance number 19-11, approving zoning from undesignated to P1 public institutional located north of 35th Avenue, east of 35th Street. Initial consideration, Linn-Mar Community School District.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 19-11, approving zoning from undesignated to public institutional located north of for the property located north of 35th Avenue and east of 35th Street, which is to be developed by the school. Discussion. Okay. All those in favor of ordinance number 19-11, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion is approved.
Your Honor, I move for ordinance number 19-05, approving an amendment to section 176.25 of the Marion Code of Ordinance to allow the sale of consumer fireworks to the I-1 Restricted Industrial District. Final consideration.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 19-05, approving an amendment to section 176.25 of the Marion Code of Ordinances to allow the sale of consumer fireworks in the I-1 Restricted Industrial District. And to clarify, this would be to restrict sales to that district only. Discussion. Yes, sir, Mr. Jensen?
Yeah, I'd like for us to consider amending this motion that would also allow for sales only for 2019 to brick and mortar or permanent buildings that previously sold fireworks during the past 2 years. And I'm doing that with the intention of knowing that there's certain people in our community that have made investments, not totally knowing what our future action or direction was going to be, and trying to come up with something that I felt was fair and equitable.
So without a second, the motion will die. So is there a second to the motion to amend? Okay, motion dies for lack of a second. We're back to the original motion that was made. Any discussion on that motion? None? Oh, yes.
I would just, Chief, has there been any movement at the state level? This is something that I guess I'm kind of glad we continued that process with. You know, we sometimes feel we know where the state or legislation may be going, and in this case here, it's proved us correct in the fact that we need to continue with what our decisions are. So unless I'm missing something, I don't believe there's been any indication that anything is closing in on a code change for the state. Is that correct?
That is correct. It came out of committee, but it's been stalled ever since.
Okay, thank you. I just, for the record, would like that to be noted. So I'm glad we continued to do our due diligence. Thank you.
Any further discussion on resolution number 275, ordinance number 19-05? Any further discussion? Okay, we'll vote. All those in favor of approving ordinance number 19-05, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Okay, the motion is approved.
Your Honor, I move resolution number 27567, approving an acquisition plat for part of Parcel A, plat of survey number 1534, that is part of Lucor Road, perpendicular to Indian Creek Road, City of Marion.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 27567, approving an acquisition plat for part of Parcel A, plat of survey number 1534, which is part of Lucor Road, perpendicular to Indian Creek Road.
Could I see a map, please?
Yes, I'm sure Tom has one.
Maybe.
So as I understood it, this parcel is, up till now, has been just by an easement. Is that correct? Is that how I read that in the report?
This may take a second.
Okay.
We don't currently own.
We have that here.
Tom, you want to put this on the overhead?
Thank you.
Yeah, the acquisition plot's on the back. Yep, there you go.
You're welcome. Do we need to note that?
Please note that the Mayor Pro Tem came to the rescue.
Dave.
Of the Director of Development.
So there's the parcel. So it's been operating as an easement, as I understand it. I believe that's correct, isn't it? Yep. So this will put the property in our hands. It's not uncommon for roads that when we get them from the county, when we annex property, that they're a right-of-way easement, and then we obtain it for right-of-way later dates. Usually it's associated with platting.
So this is for purposes of the city owning that and making it a public road.
Yep.
We didn't own any of Indian Creek, but we happen to own this piece of Lucor.
We owned half of Indian Creek, but we didn't own the other half. Remember, we had the easement, and we had to vacate the easement. And
that corner is not part of what we've heard about this evening. Is that true?
The which one?
That corner?
It's not part of the sub-area plan, no.
It's
Oh, no,
still
no.
zoned agricultural or residential?
Correct. Yeah, the zoning for the,
Right.
my apologies,
Right.
is down at the roundabout going east with Tower Terrace. Yeah.
But you know my argument, so.
Yeah. we'll keep it open. This ensures that we will have full control.
Yeah, so we can close it.
Especially the big cars, there's not room.
Okay, any further discussion on that item? Did you have your question answered?
Yes,
Mr.
thank
Draper?
you.
Okay. Any further questions on resolution number 27567, or discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve resolution number 27567, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion is approved. At this time, we have a public services discussion regarding Phase 1 of the Eco-Industrial Park Public Services Maintenance Facility. That will be Mr. Miller.
2 minutes.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Your Honor and Counsel, and I'll try to be brief as I can. The discussion tonight is for the Eco-Industrial Park, basically everything included within the Phase 1 of the park. This includes the proposed maintenance facilities, the compressed natural gas fueling stations, as well as our going into the entertainment of a compressed natural gas fleet. Tonight, I just want to focus on the proposed maintenance facility, give a council an update, as well as possibly get some direction from the council on where we want to go with this. So as it's proposed right now, in the current state of design, it's a 138,000 square foot facility that is incorporating renewable energy and distributed generation systems, as well as alternative fueling systems. Current budget of the facility, as you see it, is just shy of $11 million. Purpose of the facility, obviously, is to provide adequate equipment maintenance, storage. Right now, we're in a bit of a bind with our current tent out there at Public Service. Also to include the strategic priorities of the council with operational savings, long-term energy costs, and renewable energy. So consistent with the comprehensive plan in the manner that we need adequate facilities for community services. Current project team, Knapp Worden, they're the architect as well as the structural engineers and the construction managers. A&J Associates, they're the mechanical and electrical engineers. Anderson Bogart, they are the civil engineers. And the White Group, they are the energy analysis that was done for the facility. History of this project goes back to all the way to 2012. We had some property come up for sale behind us that was owned by the Riley family. They had about 48 acres. We were interested in about 28 acres. We went to go purchase that, and they donated 20 acres to us. And so the donated land is where you see the timber down there, and they said as long as we keep that buffer there for the neighborhood, they go ahead and just give it to us. So that's where it really started. We had no intent of looking at a facility at that time. We needed the property for our operations that included yard waste processing, things of that nature, but that's when it started. Things got serious when we had some issues with our fabric tension structure. We got a letter saying that the truss systems within that facility were compromised, and then with that we started to see deterioration of the fabric itself. And so we moved to a kind of a long-term strategy is how we want to address our facility needs. We came up with this conceptual of the Eco-Industrial Park. I believe Jacob was the one that did this. We had him under contract, so Jacob did all of the civil work in this conceptual way back then with Anderson Bogart. He did a great job. And then in May of 2017, we got real serious. The council passed a resolution supporting Phase 1 of the Eco-Industrial Park, and then we got into a preliminary design contract with Knapp Worden. Since then, we've been going hard as we can on design. In December, we had a pretty good handle on what we wanted to do, and then we did some comparative analysis of what a building like this should cost. And this is an interesting slide. These are the lower end facilities that we could find within the Midwest.
Comparably, they range from $87.50 a square foot. That was the city of Cedar Rapids. That's their large city services center. That was about 400,000 square foot, all the way up to about $233 a square foot. That's what we could find for these type of facilities within the Midwest. All these are conventional steel frame facilities, with the exception of Cedar Rapids. They did use precast walls. None of them did include any type of integration of renewables, geothermal, alternative fuels, or anything of that nature. So right now, the facility as it's proposed, on the low end, it'll come in about $78 a square foot, high end, $84 a square foot. So that's kind of how it sits right now. And that includes all the generation facilities, all the renewable and generation facilities. So this last January, we amended the scope. We included some geothermal systems that weren't really on our site to begin with, as well as on-site electrical generation. And then we're down to April now. We are in the state of finalizing designs, working with our placement agent, as well as getting construction scheduled together. That's the civil site plan as it sits. Right here is 44th Street. Here's 3rd Avenue. Right here is Rachi Construction, Emmert, right there. So this parcel right here is about 48 acres. As you see, this is all wetland, dedicated wetland through here. This is another parcel, and we also own this parcel across the street. That's looking from the proposed facility from a southern angle, southern view. This is looking at the facility from the east and from the west. And if anybody wants copies of the PowerPoint, I'd be happy to give them a copy. I have them here. That's the floor plan. Again, we have about 120,000 square feet of equipment storage and vehicle maintenance space, and just over 15,000 square feet of locker rooms, break rooms, training rooms, offices, things of that nature. That's the reception area as proposed right now. We do have plans for safety glass in the front. We just don't have the architect as in the 3D models yet. That's the operations center. That's kind of the heartbeat of the whole facility. That's where the offices are at, as well as where all the lead crew are. That's kind of the brains of the whole operation. That's the employee training and meeting space right now. And then as it sits, some of the design features, we did incorporate a 300-ton geothermal system. Again, we weren't looking at that to begin with. The reason why we did have analysis done. The rebate was very good. From the get-go, we'll get about just shy of $600,000 back from the utilities. And the cost savings, the long-term cost savings of that just made sense. That alone added $2 million to the project, but that's going to pay itself back real quick. Then we also added a 400 kilowatt generator, not only provide emergency power backup, but we can also contract that generator out for interruptible service. Anytime you have a 200 kilowatt or above generator, we can actually get paid through the incumbent utility to go through brownout stages, even if we don't have to. And then with that, we incorporated precast and insulated envelope, rated storm shelters, gas detection systems, siphonic roof drain systems, overhead conveying systems. And this is kind of a breakdown, if anybody would like a copy of this, of what our current facilities currently have against what our proposed facilities will look like. So right now in our facilities, we have 41 dedicated parking stalls for equipment. We have about 53 pieces of rolling stock at public service right now. We are proposing about 75 dedicated parking bays in this facility. Right now, we have 5 vehicle service bays. We are proposing 11 vehicle service bays. And remember that we not only maintain our fleet, we also maintain fire, police, pretty much the city's fleet as well. So we're trying to plan for growth of the city, not just of the department. And then with that, we've incorporated additional needs that aren't in our current facilities. Now we're to the point that I gave you some information on this build. We do have a good estimate, a good build for an envelope option. This includes a kind of a steel building. When the design team started going through options of the building, they did want to point something out, is that for the price difference that you see for option B, which is $11,500, we can enclose the entire facility with precast concrete. That's essentially the roof, every structure, every element of that building would be precast concrete. There are some advantage to that. The disadvantage is obviously cost. It's going to cost more. It's going to cost more than what we were looking at. But when we started looking at it, there are a lot of advantages to that. Most of which it's going to provide some protection for the fleet, as well as the construction time. They're looking at an erection time of less than 6 weeks for the entire envelope. If we went with a steel building, we're looking at 20 to 25 weeks, depending on the weather. So essentially what happens, we order the precast systems, they come in, it's set within a couple weeks, and they walk away. The life expectancy of a precast envelope is about 75 years plus. You just don't have to worry about it. Steel buildings are about 40 to 50 years life expectancy. So hopefully everybody read through that. I did give you some of this detail. And so timeline, depending on what the council wants to do, we are in a state that as soon as we get some direction, we can start preparing bid packages and start finalizing the financial plans associated with improvements. Spending status of the facility, with the professional fees, we had about $780,000 programmed. We have spent $252,000 just on the facility design alone. And then with that, that's the land acquisition back in 2012. So as soon as we get some direction from the council, we're prepared to come up with a pretty solid communication plan on the entire project, if they want to move forward with that, as well as a plan on how to provide construction updates. Since this is a construction manager project, what's going to happen is that the council is going to see every bid package going out. You're going to know the construction schedule. You're going to approve every expenditure of this project. It's probably the most transparent way that we can come up with a project like this.
What's the next step for the council?
Next step, I was hoping to get some direction on what you want to consider as a final facility alternative. We have 2 building envelopes here. The council asked us, our Public Services Board did make a recommendation. They would like to go with option B, spend more money. But it's entirely up to the city council. We're hoping to get feedback from you. From that point, we can finalize the plans, go back to our financing agent, and get a solid financial plan, and then start going out for bid. Questions, I guess?
So when is that decision, is that going to be on the next agenda or something? Or
we can, or unless you have any feedback you want to give me tonight.
Oh, would that require a vote, Lon?
Doesn't require a vote.
It does not require a vote?
Now, if you wanted to take formal action on it, to do a motion or something like that to direct staff, then you'd want to put it on a future agenda. I think what Ryan was looking for tonight was just some feedback from council,
on where we're at.
if you'd like more detail on it, or if you have strong feelings one way or the other.
Yep.
Yes.
I have two questions. We've seen a lot of preliminary costs, and I know this hasn't gone out to bid yet, but we've seen preliminary costs, hard costs associated with it. We've seen some rebates coming back and so forth. In your opinion, I don't need the breakdown of details, but can we absorb the differences between A and B within a relatively close budget that we've allocated for this build out, or are we going to be looking to spend?
So those are pre-bid numbers. Those are without going out for bid. So every element of this project, we went out and got bids from contractors. We got solid bids. When this goes out to bid, we anticipate we'll get more competitive bids. What I can say is that the precast contractors that are interested in this project have said they're pretty slow right now. That's all I'm going to say. Is there room to? Yeah, there probably is some room. You're going to see those numbers flex one way or another. I will say that steel prices are kind of all over the page right now. So I'm not quite sure what that bid's going to come back at.
What's the life expectancy of the steel roof? I know from the agriculture side, I think I know, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. There's a difference between the precast walls with steel roof versus precast all. What's the life expectancy of the steel roof?
So according to our design team, the industry standard for a steel roof is 40 to 50 years. With a precast roof, it's plus 74 years.
So they're saying we can get 40 to 50 out of a steel roof.
Yep. Yep.
What does that mean for your operations to have that additional, 16 weeks in difference?
It's a big, for our operations is one thing, but for controlling the site and controlling the construction of the project, that's a big deal. You only have one subcontractor now, and they're just putting the pieces together. They walk away, your building envelope's done. That's one benefit. When you have a steel construction, that's going to take a long time. You're going to have multiple subs on the site. Steel goes up, then your precast walls go in around it. So there's some advantages to the precast. There's more advantage to the precast in terms of the facility. The disadvantage, it's going to cost more.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Gadela.
How does this fit into the budget in the CIP for the project? Could we do either of these, or I know Randy just asked about
right
the
now,
dollars,
the CIP is approved for 10,780.
Okay.
That's in the CIP. The design team wanted to point out this is an option. We could do this for this price.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you were willing to be happy with the 10.
That would work.
An 80 option.
It would work. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Jensen.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think you've done a fantastic job controlling the cost of this project up to this point. But I've got two comments.
Yep.
One is we did approve the additional cost for the geothermal at the beginning of the year. That made a lot of sense to me and I think to everybody on the city council because of the short payback. That had a payback that made sense. That was a good investment. I have a more difficult time saying let's spend another $720,000, whereas the steel roof has a 45 to 50 year life. That's going to be more than sufficient. And here's my key point, is if you were to put several items in front of me for additional places the city should spend $720,000, probably going to select something else.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I come down to. I go, you've got a good proposal, you've controlled your costs, you've done exactly what we asked you to do, but I think the city, if we were to start saying where else should we spend $720,000, I think we had a really difficult time coming up with the CIP. That'd be my biggest issue with doing this.
Yep.
Yes,
I
Mr.
would
Brandt.
like to add to that too that 40 to 50 years versus 75 plus. 70 years from now, who knows what is going to be needed? You may not even have garbage trucks anymore. I mean,
We'll be the Jetsons.
It might be flying. Everything might just vanish, So I would probably go to the least expensive one, the original plan, just because. 40 years. Lon has brought up before that a lot of city facilities in 20, 25 years, it's time to
I hope not.
make new ones.
Councilman Draper.
Yeah.
I could tell you about the last 70 years, but we won't go into that. The thing I wondered, I have a problem with distance. When we bought this land from Riley, what's the connection between our 35th Street, the back side of it, to the southwest of the Riley property?
What do you mean connection? So here's our current property. Let me go back a couple more slides.
Can you get to that new building from 35th Street or just from 44th?
No, you can get to it from 3rd Avenue. Let me go back.
3rd Avenue, okay.
Yeah.
Road's already
Oh,
there.
yeah, 3rd Avenue, yeah.
So here's 3rd Avenue,
Yeah, there you go.
right there. Here's our current facility. And then here's 44th Street.
Okay, so now from 35th.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Other comments? Do you feel like you got enough
I
direction?
think I got enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions?
You're doing a great job. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time we have a public forum, which is time that is set aside for comments from the public on topics other than those listed on the agenda. Is there anyone here to address the council on any item that was not on the agenda? Please come forward. Okay, I don't see anyone coming forward. We will move on to our council discussion time. We'll start with Ms. Gadela.
Nope.
Nothing? Mr. Brandt?
Ooh, I don't want to stand between the door.
Okay. Steve?
I'll pass.
Okay.
No.
Well, I can't.
Mr. Draper, I'm
Attaboy,
sure
Paul.
you have something. So
When you saw the
they've all
magazine-
conceded their time to Mr. Draper.
What is that? Who's that on there?
Look at this, autograph time. She's a TV star as well. Well, I won't take as long as I had, but I did want to say that Marion got its first fire truck in 1874. And our current chief knows where that fire truck is. The city bonded at the time for $800. I think we'd probably cost a little bit more than that to buy that back, but it'd make a great display. In the back of our new station, it would really make a great display. So I think we should think about that a little bit. I begin to think about our stations, and I don't know that everyone knows, but the Katz brothers gave the city on Katz Drive the land for the fire station and the police station and an extra lot. And we built a police station that's interesting, that Chief would appreciate, that did not have a ladies' locker room in it. That's how behind times we were at the time. But the fire station and the police station, and they finally did sell. Well, George Murdoch, bless him, bought a lot, and he wanted everybody to know that he was the only person that had paid any money for any of that land out there, because the city hadn't. But I'll tell you a quick little story about George, and then I'll be quiet in here. But first thing that happened is they Katz Drive, they put in their bill in the police station and then the fire station. They have a sign up there, big sign, said dead end. And George said, "Hey guys, could we have that sign say something else?" My funeral home and that sign don't get along real well. So they had a sign up then that said no outlet. Well, the second thing that happened to George that very same year is he had 6 vehicles, and he went down to license them. He didn't. He sent one of the guys down, and he come back with a license, and he sent him right back. He said, "I cannot use these license plates. They say DOA on them." So the county had to reissue George some license plates. But George was going to build his funeral home downtown. He owned our building, the coffee shop, the Murdoch building, and the building behind us, the old railroad building that now is part of our operation. And because historically that property became important to him, he was willing to go to where he went to build the new funeral home. And that speaks very well for George Murdoch. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. For my part, mentioned a couple of things I've done since the last meeting. I was invited to attend the opening of the Cedar Rapids Encore Cafe, and of course their city was not partnering with the program like our city does. It was being hosted by a church, but I had the honor of attending and speaking at that, and also last week I was asked to be the keynote speaker at the Youth Leadership for 5 Seasons graduation. So that was a nice event, and I'm happy to have had that opportunity to talk to the participants of that program and inspire them and encourage them to look for opportunities that they have here to have a fulfilling life in this region and in this community, and to use their talents here locally. And coming up, I'm helping with the opening of Prospect Meadows. That should be an exciting event for our entire community, so look for information come out on that, that will be a very big event and a wonderful thing to celebrate. I want to, for reaching higher, I want to recognize the entire council. I think you made a good decision to back the saving of those houses. I think we can look our community in the eye and say we did a good thing for the future of the community by preserving our past. You really do benefit even from a small building like those buildings by saving those historic buildings. It does say something about who we are as a community, and I think it will be used as an example across the state. I've already seen lots of great publicity from people across the nation, actually, pointing to Marion and saying they did it right. They did the right thing. So good job for reaching higher and setting the example to the council. And I'll just add that we have so much coming up that we all have so much to be proud of. As I always say, we have a lot to be happy about, and keep up the good work, everyone. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.